Okay. We are the one. We are the children. We are the ones who make a brighter day. So let's start giving. Oh, what's up, Luke? Luke. What? Luke? What's up? We are the children. We are the ones who make a brighter day. So let's start giving. Beautiful song. Lots of beautiful voices in it. What's up, Casey? Once again, pulling an all-nighter. Can't relate. I can't really pull all-nighters anymore. I guess I could, but it would just be deleterious to my health. I don't know. I hope someday my life is the kind of life that I can pull all-nighters again, because genuinely, I think I would be happiest in a life that would allow me to take the occasional all-nighter. But I don't know. I think the perfect life for me, honestly, would be one where I don't ever have to sleep. I think that would be the answer. Because as lazy as I'm accused of being sometimes, I actually spend basically all of my time doing things, and it leaves me often feeling very, I don't know, not exhausted, but like there's more things to do than there are hours in the day. And also I have the problem of thinking like, oh man, I love being up all night. It's so fun. It's so cool. It's nice. It's just so there's so many reasons why it's so good. And then I also like being up in the mornings. I like being up in the morning and watching the day get started. And I always feel more aware of my surroundings and more alert when I have the chance to wake up pretty early in the morning and watch the sun come up a little bit. So, I don't know. I don't think there's really a perfect time that could be oriented for me, but it would be nice to be able to do an all-nighter every so often. I'm 22, so I can still do that. I only do that before my days off. Yeah, I mean, I can still do it physically, but like life-wise, it's not good. Like if there were different, like if my life was a little different, then my physical health wouldn't really suffer from it as much, but the way I would have to do things right now, I would end up, like if I tried to pull an all-nighter tonight, I would still end up having to sleep at some point tomorrow because I would just crash out, and that would leave me ill-equipped to do the things I need to do tomorrow. I like staying up late because of how quiet it is. It's honestly the only time where I can be at peace. That's kind of the way I feel too, and I feel like we're not alone on that, Luke. I feel like there's a lot of people who feel like nighttime is the only time that they can actually achieve any meaningful level of peace. And for me, it's always been that way. I kind of miss being able to sit out in front of my. I used to live in an apartment, at least I would overwinter in an apartment when I was living on the road. And I miss sitting on that front porch at that apartment complex because I was I was always the only person really sitting on the front porch at night. Nobody else really used that area except for coming in and out at night. So I would just sit there, and I guess you can't call it people watching because it wasn't like there were people actively milling around and doing things, but it's like sitting there kind of observing the complex, listening to all the frogs and the occasional sound of a fight out of someone's apartment. All that kind of good stuff. Hi, hello. Hello, Daniel. There, now it's set to all messages. What are you smoking? Cannabis, my friend. Good old cannabis. Never tried it? Holy shit, how old are you? Is it any good? Weed is pretty good, my friend, yes. I mean, I guess it depends on who you are. For some people, it doesn't have a very good reaction with their system. For other people, it's the perfect drug, basically. For me, it's basically the perfect drug. It keeps me level. It keeps me engaged. It keeps me, I guess that's basically it. It keeps me level and it keeps me engaged. That's a good way to put it. Oh, Lord. If you're 14, you are far too young to be hanging out in this chat, my friend. We talk about adult things here, and I am terribly afraid that someone who's 14 is probably not going to be able to add much to the conversation. But if you think you can... Yeah, some people can't smoke it, but it's all right. Yeah, exactly. Although if you're only 14, I would not recommend trying cannabis. Or be adult. Yeah, dude, nobody can ban you out of this chat for being 14 if you never tell anybody you're 14. Although, to be fair, I did ask how old you were. But when you said it like that, when you said the things you had up until that point, I honestly thought you were going to say, I'm like 65 or something. So, I'm never going to smoke. Yeah, but you're also 14. I felt the same exact way when I was your age, believe it or not. Now, I have a crippling nicotine addiction. With that triangle behind you, I imagine you're okay with 14-year-olds. I bet you imagine that because you listen to a lot of Fox News and listen to a lot of right-wing demagogues talk about queer people. And you've taken everything that they say to heart, even though it doesn't reflect reality. The fact of it is, trans people are way more likely to be abused as children sexually than to abuse children sexually. Actually, in terms of victim perpetration rates, as in someone gets abused as a child and then they turn around and abuse children later on, we, once again, as a result of being the highest, like we're the most likely demographic to have been abused as children, and we are also the least likely to abuse children. So that means that among trans people, it is way more rare to be abused and to turn around and not abuse than it is for other groups of people. But go ahead and keep repeating the same fucking Fox News talking points everyone in your life reinforces around you. I know that that's the comfortable way to think, and I also understand that there's a lot of political pressure and social pressure on you to feel the way that you do and to judge people like me against, by the way, the so-called morals and ideology of small government conservatism. You're saying this happened to you? Well, it did happen to me, but I wasn't talking about myself when I brought up those statistics. Statistically speaking, trans people are the least likely to sexually abuse, and yet we're the most likely to be sexually abused, either as children or as adults. I leave for a second and these morons... Yeah, dude. All you have to do is walk away from the chat for a few fucking... and the chat will be utterly fucking filled to the brim with idiots. I mean, it's not filled to the brim with idiots yet, honestly. There are still a few intelligent people in here trying to have some kind of conversation, but it's pretty dismal. Also, there's 58 people in here. Make sure you guys hit that like button. It really does help the channel. Every single time you hit that button, it's another chance for the stream to be recommended in more people's algorithms, which is another chance for the stream to become more interesting by virtue of its chat becoming larger and more participatory. And that's another thing. If you want to make this stream more interesting, please do the best thing you can and participate in the chat. Ask interesting questions, engage with the topic at hand, etc. But keep it flowing. That's what we rely on here. This is a man. You're totally welcome to be wrong. You are totally welcome to be wrong. Do you like Hassan Abi? I don't know how to pronounce that dude's full name, come to think of it. I always just call him Hassan. I like Hassan. but I don't like Hassan, you know? Like, I'm cool with Hassan, you know? I tend to agree with takes, but I'm not a big fan of him as a personality, if that makes sense. Like, he's just not my kind of performer, but that's fine. Not every leftist on the planet needs to be, you know? I don't have to like every leftist creator out there. They don't have to like me. It's fine. What the fuck is that? Man, if I am the wildest fucking thing you've seen on the internet all day, then I am so thankful for your tame experience. Do you watch people like us on? Well, I watch a podcast called Deep Fat Fried. They're actually live right now on their Deep Fat Fried and Onion Nuggets channels. They're the main podcast I watch. They're kind of political sometimes, but mostly like a comedy show that brings up politics and the news. So I would say them. And I used to watch quite a bit of Vosh. Now I don't really watch any Vosh at all. I'm really trying to. I'm racking my brain trying to think if there's any other of those personalities that appeal to me even a little bit. ContraPoints, I guess, although I haven't watched any of her content in a long time. So, oh, the only other, well, no. I was going to say there was one other person, but no. They're a science YouTuber that occasionally covers religion as a topic, but they're not, you know, like that's not the focus of their channel, so it wouldn't be right to include them here. I love DFF. Yeah, who doesn't, right? If you know about DFF, there's a good chance you feel strongly about them one way or the other. I watched Vosh in 2019. I remember when he had like um, 8,000 subs. Oh my God, no. I do not remember that. I mean, I know it had to be a stage, you know? It's like if this channel ever becomes like hundreds of thousands of people strong, you know, Luke, you'll be one of the people that remembered me back when I was like 2,400 subs, you know, just a mere 2,400. But it's crazy to think about that once someone has attained that kind of success. And I mean, Vosh has had that kind of success since 2020. I mean, I remember watching a lot of Vosh in 2020 and it being a big influencing factor on my vote later that year. So, I don't know. Strange to think about. 2019 to 2020 was such a massive time in my life, like such a time of massive change. Strange to look back on it now and think about how much is different about my life in 2018 versus my life in 2021. You a girl or a boy? Sorry to have to ask. You're fine. I'm a girl, though. You're fine, though. I understand I have a deep voice. Sorry, I'm trying to read the chat. But right now, I'm mostly looking at bands. Hi. Hello. So did you guys hear about Marjorie Taylor Greene admitting that she didn't read the fucking bill she signed? Craziest thing is Casey will eventually be on the Phoebe Opie channel no matter how big she gets. That would be fun. And eventually I want to start doing like a call-in kind of thing. I don't know which day I'll do it or anything like that, because I got to get my audio shit figured out first and actually make it decent sounding. Because right now you can hear all kinds of room noise whenever I stream in my room using my desktop setup, and I hate that. I hate that you can hear nothing but fucking room noise. So I'm going to attempt to fix that. But that's going to take a while. It's going to take a while and some expense to fix that. But once I do, I would like to start having people, or at least giving people the ability to come on via call-in. Of course she didn't. What now? What's going on? So I just dropped that bomb on you guys, and you guys are just gonna like continue walking forward, not considering it at all. Dude, Marjorie Taylor Greene admitted on X that there's a giant provision in that bill that she disagrees with completely, and she was like, I wouldn't have voted on this bill if I had known it was in there," which she could have known by reading the fucking bill, the text of which had to have been provided to them before signing. So it's so absurd, and it sounds to me like she is just trying to fob off responsibility onto all of her staff and all of the people around her. It's not her fault that she didn't read the text of legislation that she signed into law. It's not her fault. It's her staff's fault for not informing her. And this is a perfect example of the way that different standards are applied and accepted among the upper class, the elite, the bourgeoisie, than are accepted among the working class, the people down on the bottom, the people like you and me that actually have to work in the factories and do the office work and push the paper, push the broom, and do all that, right? That sort of thing would get you fired if you were just like a janitor or something. Like, for example, if you were a janitor and you used a chemical that is basically safe, but you use it in the one way that makes it unsafe, right? Or you use it in a way that because you missed some critical step, now it's unsafe. And let's say it was some kind of cleaning chemical, and it left some kind of waxy residue, and somebody falls on the floor and slips, and they break a hip or something. Do you think you should be able to waive responsibility by saying, oh, well, I wouldn't have used that cleaner, or I would have done it correctly if I'd only known how I was supposed to do it, but nobody told me how to do it? Would we allow that? Maybe, if nobody had told them how to select chemicals for use and how to determine which ones to use and make sure you're following the guidelines. Maybe. But this is a lawmaker we're talking about. This is a lawmaker. We know for a fact that these people have to get these documents before they sign them. And that there's no excuse for simply not reading the fucking thing that you're about to sign. It's something we would not accept out of a regular working class person. If a regular working class person used a chemical in a way that was inconsistent with the manner described on its packaging, that person would be fired for their incompetence, or they would at the very least be admonished. They might not be fired, but they would be admonished. By the way, Luke Skyrunner, I just want to say you're doing fine, and I don't want you to like back off. I do want to say this. Some trolls are welcome here. You know, readable, original, interesting. Now, I trust that the people you've banned have probably been fit within that, but I see a lot of bans going by, so I do want to point out that some trolls, we allow them to stick around. And if ever you see somebody that you just want me to respond to directly because you're like, oh man, that's a juicy one, I'm going to leave that one specifically for Phoebe to toy with, feel free, because we use those people just as well. So yeah, I just want you guys to, keep that in mind. And I'm not getting on to you or anything. I really appreciate you modding the chat. I really appreciate you helping make this place a readable place and an interesting place to hang out. So I hope you know that it comes from a good place. Also, there's 154 people in here. Make sure you guys hit that like button. It really does help. Every single time you hit that like button, it increases the chances of the stream being shown on more of the algorithm, which makes the stream more interesting because it makes the chat engagement go up. And the more chat engages, the more interesting the stream can be by virtue of it having more interesting interactors, right? So please hit that like button. Help the channel out, help yourselves out, and help me make more interesting. You sent one several times and you just don't feel like I'm seeing it for some reason, please send it in a super chat. I read every single one. Have children? I do. I already have one. I already have a children. I don't want to have any more right now. Have more children. Man, you weirdo. Why are you so obsessed with other people's children, bro? Do you think kids under 18 should get hormone therapy? Hormone therapy? I don't know. puberty blockers, maybe. I think 16 might be a logical age to say, okay, you're 16, you've been out as trans for 5 years now. There's no sign that you're regretful about it at all. Everything in life has just reinforced that. So at this point, you can take, and, you know, I don't know why that would be a problem. That's when Kim Petra started fucking HRT, and look at her now, you know? I think it's a more debatable topic than people make it out to be on both sides. Because I feel like I look at the hardcore left and I see, like, you know, my side of politics. I feel like I look at the hardcore left, right? And I see a lot of, like, dismissal of the issue and a lot of skirting around the idea, a lot of not engaging with it, or just a lot of, like, yes, it's a non-issue, it doesn't matter. If that's what the kid's medical care necessitates, then sure. And then I see a lot of people on the right wing that are like, you shouldn't be able to take HRT until you're 21 years old, and even then it should only be in this specific set of circumstances, and really we should discourage it, and really trans people shouldn't exist at all, blah, 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 right? And really, I think the answer, like in so many things in life, maybe not in politics, but so many things in life, lies somewhere between those two very extreme positions. And I think the middle between those two very extreme positions is 16 to 18, you know? And let's maybe talk about puberty blockers, because the science ain't in yet as to whether that's like a negative consequence thing, or if that, like, we don't know yet if that leads to better outcomes or worse outcomes. So why don't we do the research? Why don't we go through the arduous process of science that it's going to take to figure out which one is true, and then go for that? Also, I'm going to fix the chat. It is goddamn unreadable right now because there are just too many fucking people going at it at once, which is great. Like, I'm glad for it. But you kind of have to trim it down just a little bit in terms of who can participate and how quickly, because otherwise things just become unreadable. You can't even tell what people are saying. You can't even tell what people are trying to say. Even the shit talk becomes unreadable. It's like you'll see fat and you'll only get like 2 letters into the word before the fucking T disappears. And it's like, God damn, I can't even read the fat comments. Like, I try, but it just disappeared before I get that far. Oh man, Luke is going back through and banning all you bitches that were talking shit. It's beautiful to see. Some of you guys might have been original, but the only way we'll find that out is if Luke personally sees your comment and decides, you know what, that's original enough to say. You are less enough of a moron. We can trust you to interact in the chat, even if you will be a toxic cunt throughout your experience. At least you'll be an intelligent toxic cunt. And if that's decided of you, then you'll be allowed to stay. And if not, bye-bye. When is Pride Month? Genuine question. June. So today's the third night of Pride Month because it is because it's June the 3rd. Troll can't handle a tasty trans person. I don't know about that, but I think honestly, I think it comes from a lot of different directions. I think some of it's attraction, and I think some of it's jealousy. So closeted people that are deeply closeted and like toxically closeted, people who literally cannot come out of the closet, that are grown adults, but they can't come out of the closet because they are too intrinsically involved with their church and the religious community that surrounds them, and all of, like, their entire life is built around maintaining this lie, right? And so they see someone like me that doesn't live within that lie, who rejects the lie, who says, no, you do not have to wear the chains of gender. What you were assigned as at birth on the basis of your sex does not have to be the gender that you live with for the rest of your life. People see someone like me living that truth, and people like that are super deeply closeted, it makes them angry, because they look at their own lives and they see how little they've been able to express themselves. They see how deeply they've been suppressed in terms of their own self-expression and their outward behaviors. And they get angry. They cast that vitriol at me because I am tantamount to, I'm basically a giant living statue that stands to the virtues of living a life unchained from gender. And as people that have been under those chains for their entire lives, they look at me with scorn and anger and jealousy. I'll be back later. Okie dokie. What's up, Merrick? Pride Month's happening now? Yep. By the way, there's 432 people in here. Make sure you hit that like button, and you do like it. Come on, admit it. You like it. You wouldn't be here if you didn't. There's still 247 of you here. It's been ranging between 247 and 450. So go ahead and hit that like button, because if you stuck around this long, it's 25 minutes in, and we've been at high viewers for about 20 minutes now. So if you stuck around this long, you like the content. So please go ahead and hit that like button so we can bring even more crazy people, degenerates, philosophers, sodomites, and various assorted deviants into our midst. Let's bring them all to us. Come on. I'm holding unholy mass, and I need congregation. You go down just like Holy Mary, Mary on a cross. Not just another Holy Mary, Mariana. You go down just like Holy Mary, Mariana cross. Your beauty never really scared me, Mariana cross. That's a lot. Yep. That is a lot, but we range pretty. We've been ranging pretty good here, honestly. Pride Month has been good to us. What can we say? By the way, happy Pride Month, everybody! Happy Pride Month. Happy and happy joy to everyone who is now thanking their lucky stars that Musk's contract or whatever was not somehow renewed so that he could continue fucking things up. But like I've been saying, though, honestly, I think that was more or less doomed to happen. I think that he was pretty much on his way out, like, months ago. Like, I think he was on his way out the moment he stepped in, and he just didn't know it. He thought he was going to be a government fixture for the next couple of years. No. Suffer unto me, the worst of all ye. Yes. Suffer unto me, the worst of all ye. Come listen to the dark sermon. I do think it's hilarious, though, that Elon Musk has come out and called Trump's big, beautiful bill an abomination. What do you do for work? I'm actually between jobs right now. So I don't know what I'll be doing for work in the next couple of weeks when I end up getting another job. As of right now, I guess the only thing I do for work is YouTube, honestly. That's the only thing I do to make income as of right this second. There are things I do that maintain food supply, but that is different from a job in the capitalist sense. Like, I live on a homestead, and we have a garden that produces a heavy amount of our food, and we have stock that produce a pretty sizable portion of our food, hopefully more starting this fall. And a lot of my time day to day, even when I am working, is devoted to the upkeep of that and helping out with the garden, because I'm not the main gardener in the house, but I am the only person left who can do heavy lifting. So that kind of shit needs done. I'm always the one who gets tapped for that. Two egotistical megalomaniacs were unable to get along. Perish the thought. I know. Yeah. Well, I mean, who would have fucking thunk, right? And that was destined. But I think we can all agree that the war between Elon and Donald Trump was doomed to happen. It was fated to happen. There was no other choice. There was no other way. It had to be like this. And the reason it had to be like this is because, as really narcissistic, who think more highly of themselves than either of them does of each other or any other human being on the planet. One of them had to win out in the end, but only one of them was elected to high office. Only one of them has the has the closest thing to a mandate of the people since Obama. And that's Trump, not Musk. Musk is much more hated than Trump is. Trump is disliked, I would say, by a majority of the country. Elon Musk is hated by a majority of the country. I would say maybe a fifth of the country really hates Trump. Maybe a third, honestly. I would say pretty much every Democrat hates Trump. So probably like a little less than a third. But I would say 2/3 of Americans at the very least dislike him. Because you got a whole third of America, over a third of America, that did not vote last year. And they were eligible to, so you would think if they really liked Trump in any way, they would have gotten their asses to the voting booth, right? Their unwillingness to do so, in my opinion, speaks louder than any sort of political advocacy we might be hearing out of loud people on the internet, including myself. I'm trans, but I can't come out until I'm older because my parents hate the idea and I'm scared. Well, Velocital, you have a, did I read that name right? You have a hard road to hoe in front of you, but you will get through it. Ultimately, you are not in your parents' clutches forever, and you would be shocked how easy it is. You would be shocked how easy it is to get through difficult shit that you know you just have to get through for some end goal. Once you have that end goal in mind, and once you get yourself in the mindset of like, I am pursuing that. That is whatever all of this is leading up towards. And if you have it in your head that I'm going to escape my parents' clutches, and I'm going to get to the place where I'm going to get to some place where I can have my own place and I can come out, I can have a group of friends that supports me, etc., then you should start orienting your life towards that now. If you're too young to work, then, I guess this advice doesn't really work for you. But if you're 16 and you're working, something like that, you should be saving every single fucking dime of money that you can get, sacrificing every creature comfort you can so that you've got like 10 grand when you go to leave your parents' home. That way you can go to some other city and you've got a couple of grand that you can use to get yourself an apartment and get yourself set up in your new city. And, knowing that that's your direction, knowing that that's where you're going and that's where you're headed, can make going through that process of living with people who are anti-trans and bigoted way easier, especially if you can stand to just kind of grin and bear it, or if you can stand to just remain silent about it until you're out of their clutches. Like, the worst advice I think a trans person can give another trans person, especially a young person, is hey, fight with your parents while you're still under their roof and under their care. Retarded, really dumb advice. Bad advice. I hate it when queer advocates do that kind of shit. Horrible advice. Do not do that. Don't fight with your parents if you're under their care and you don't have especially if you don't have like a family member that you know is outright pro-queer. If you have a family member that's outright pro-queer, then go ahead and do it, because ultimately at that point, your parents aren't going to kill you. 99 like, I don't know, 999,999 parents out of a million are not going to fucking kill you for that shit. And the ones who would, I think, will have second thoughts before they get that far. Your parents are not going to be the ones who kill you for being queer, So if you've got a super pro-queer family member, hey, you go on ahead on the knowledge that you can call that person up and they will help you out. But if you don't have that, or if that pro-queer family member is in a bad spot and would not be able to take you in, please don't fight with your parents over the matter of you being queer or other people being queer, because it just strains the relationship, and you will honestly have a way, way, way more pleasing fucking teardown of them if you just wait long enough for you to have more ammunition, long enough for you to be able to make the arguments, right? And once you're out of their clutches, once you're not under their roof anymore, then you can come at them with, you have suppressed my identity for my entire life. There were a few times when I tried to show it and it was always reacted negatively against. And you can set the boundary at that point. But try not to rock that boat until you get out from under their roof, because as long as you rock the boat while you're there, you are opening a can of worms that unfortunately ends up leading to child abuse in a lot of cases. Hey, just curious, do you think it's responsible to smoke weed on YouTube so 18-year-old influential people are watching you? Influential people? What? I set the this stream is for 18 plus or whatever thing. So if there are kids watching, that's on them, and that's on their parents, most importantly. It's not up to me to make sure your dumbass kid is not watching my stupid ass on YouTube. And for the record, YouTube's terms of service don't outright ban consumption of THC or tobacco or anything else like that. I guess it probably bans the consumption of illegal drugs, but THC is legal in many jurisdictions. A lot of jurisdictions in America, honestly, most jurisdictions at least have a medical program. So, but with that being said, it's not against YouTube's terms of service, although it is something that they will demonetize a stream for. But that just affects like ad revenue. That doesn't affect doesn't affect like memberships or anything like that. So Merrick says, who cares if people under 18 use weed? A lot of them probably do anyway. They probably do. My thing is, I'm not even trying to encourage that. Yeah, if you're under 21, I think you should be probably pretty cautious about smoking weed. Probably best if you don't do it. But it's also not my responsibility to sit here and police my own behavior that is well within the YouTube terms of service in order to please either the small minds of bigots or the clutched pearls of parents who should really be spending less time monitoring an internet chat and more time monitoring their children, etc. It's on you to parent your kid in such a way that they're not able to sit around watching some dumbass on YouTube smoking weed. Sorry. It's not on me to not be that. Adults do adult things in adult spaces. Get over it. Not to be rude, but why not just be gay? Because I'm not gay. I'm bisexual. I'm also trans. Because what I perceive myself as, what hobbies I like, what mannerisms I naturally accustom myself to, etc. All of that is separate from what I have interest in sexually. People underage should be able to... What's up? Oh, shit. That's the biggest chat we've ever had in here. That's dope. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. $99.99. I disagree with most of what you have said. I am sorry you were in between jobs. I hope Americans learn to use both hemispheres and stop the mass division. Please try to see with both eyes. Namaste, fool. Hey, namaste to you too, man. I really do appreciate the super chat. That is super dope of you, and I really do thank you for that. That's really cool. And yeah, like I like people like you most of all. Like you're able to say, like, yeah, I disagree with you without being, all right, you're like, like a complete douchebag about it. And it's fine to be a complete douchebag about it, but a lot of people want to be that way, and then they get mad at you when you're that way back. And it just creates all of this acrimony when ultimately people could just accept the fact that occasionally they'll be douchebags to each other, but nobody's able to do that. And so, like I said, it's just a giant generator of acrimony. But what I really prefer, I think the best kind of interactions are those wherein two people realize, you know what, we disagree pretty fundamentally on the facts of this matter, but that is no reason why we can't have a decent conversation about it. That's no reason why we can't argue about the facts. That's no reason why we can't argue about our own opinions and perceptions of the matter. In fact, that's more reason to argue about them because we might find out more about one another's position. Now, like Sun Tzu, The Art of War, the best, like knowing your enemy is defeating your enemy. I don't remember how the saying goes, but like if you look at, if you actually look at politics as like a battle of the minds, right? Then the best thing you can do to better equip yourself for that battle is talking on the other side. Get an eye for their strategy. Get an eye and a mind for how they think, how they look at things, why they justify things the way they do. That's why I'm so good at arguing with conservatives. That's why I have 2,400 subscribers on the back of me arguing with conservatives. Because as annoying as some of them will claim to find me, as fat as some of them will talk about me being, they love arguing with someone who is familiar enough with their arguments to preempt them. That's why. So with all that being said, thank you so much for the $100. If you sent a chat and I didn't see it, it's not because I'm ignoring it. I spend a lot of time on a chat that I read. Like if I read your chat, there's a good chance you're going to listen to like a 3.5 minute rant about it. So what's the difference between being gay and trans? Well, one is a sexual identity that has to do with like what you like in terms of genitalia on another person and in terms of presentation in another person, whereas being trans has to do with your own presentation, like how you see yourself, how you want to dress, how you want to behave, what hobbies you want to have, what name that you want to be used, etc. It has nothing to do with your weight. It has to do with you having wrong information. Well, I was just using fat as an example of one of the many kinds of derisive comments I'll get on here. I recognize that that's probably not most people's argument. Not ones who actually want to have an argument with me. So what is a gay trans? Does it make them straight? I used to wonder the same kind of question. Okay, here's the answer. So if, like, say a trans woman like me, if I only liked other women, I would be considered I would still be a lesbian because I'm a woman who happens to be trans who is only attracted to other women, which would make me a lesbian. To transphobes, it would probably make me just like a straight man, but that's why they don't get to decide what reality is, right? Because it would be a completely inaccurate summation. They would tell someone about me, and then they would meet me and realize how fucking wrong they were, right? How far off the mark they were. And it's obvious within seconds of meeting me that I'm clearly neither straight nor a man, right? I don't have any issue with you calling yourself whatever you want. You can't expect me to figure out what you are. Well, I don't think you should have to figure out what I am. I mean, you see a person wearing a blouse, probably pretty safe to assume I'm a woman, right? Like, most trans men that are going to correct you about them not being women are not going to wear women's clothes. Most trans women that are going to correct you about them being women are not going to wear men's clothes, you know? Etc., etc. Will there occasionally be people who put on a trans identity merely to get the reaction? Sure. But if it makes you feel any better, I've been out as trans for over 5 years. And I've only been streaming for 6 months. Yo, what up? Been so long, bro? Yeah. I mean, hey, we're still at it. Still at it. I have a question. What is your opinion on transgender kids? I think that a person can realize they are trans super young. As far as what we should do about that medically, I think that the science is kind of out as to what the best option is. I think more research needs to be done into puberty blockers. I think they might be a good solution to allow children long enough to decide, am I actually trans? Is this just another feature of my identity, but I'm perfectly comfortable with my gender at birth, etc.? And, I think once we know for sure, okay, outcomes with this are usually good or outcomes with this are usually bad. I think once we know that, then we're in a position to make a more educated guess as to which direction we should go with our care. But as of right now, I think the science is kind of out. I think maybe puberty blockers are the answer. I don't know. What I do know is that I think a person should be allowed to start HRT at 16 if they've been out as trans for like 3 years or so. I don't know what the exact number should be. You'd have to consult a child psychologist for that. But I do think that you would probably have a lot better outcomes trans healthcare in general if you were able to start someone on that when they're like 16, with parental consent, obviously, because that's going to be a big issue that people are going to argue about. And I don't think that it's like, we're talking about such a small percentage of the population that I really don't think it's something worth getting every parent in America's hair up about. So yes, with parental consent, if a person's like been out as trans since they were like fucking 13 and now they're 16 or 17 and they really want to start HRT, I think that they should be able to. At the very least, I think that they should be able to petition a court for a waiver that says, okay, normally you would start HRT at 18, but you've been out as trans for this long, you've been socially transitioned for this long, and we are going to allow you to start early. Let me see. I got another super chat. Let me see here. Queer? Oh, I know. Yeah. Duh. You couldn't tell that? I mean, obviously you could, but is there somebody out here who couldn't tell? Pride Month doesn't exist anymore. Says who? Where'd you get that idea, friend? I'm sorry about the other day. My friend hijacked my phone. My beliefs are different. I don't care what you do with your body. I mean, that, that sounds like a tall tale, my friend, but I will take you at your word, and I forgive you. It's okay. We can be friends again. Ah, yes, fellows, TJ has proclaimed and decided to abolish Pride Month because the world revolves around him. Clearly, he is correct. Yeah, dude. He gets to decide the way the world works because there are millions of planets rotating around millions of stars that all rotate around their central galaxies, and they all rotate around one central point. And he believes that that point is him. He couldn't be more wrong about this fact, but it's not going to stop him, ever. I'd be really grateful if they could just separate pride and men's mental health. Like, who the fuck keeps trying to, I feel like it's MRA types that are the same month. Like, there are about a dozen months. There are literally a dozen months. Men's Mental Health Month doesn't have to be in June. That's something that has been done explicitly to make people argue about it. It is literally something, it is a choice that was made explicitly to get it argued about. In that way, it's really fucking phenomenal marketing. Like, in that way, you couldn't have asked for a better marketing campaign. But it's got the unfortunate side effect of making people pissed off on both sides. But that's just like every other goddamn thing in America, isn't it? Think about it critically for a second. Every fucking thing in America these days is meant to keep us fighting with each other. And when I say us, I mean working class people who have to work and hustle to make a living. Whatever that hustle is, whatever that work is, they have to be active every day doing something, usually to generate value for someone way richer than them in order to get their bread to continue living. That is the game that is afoot, is keeping me and you and people like us more worried about what we do in each other's bedrooms and how we raise each other's kids and all this other shit than we are about looking at the people who are responsible for keeping our wages stagnant over the last 50 years, for making sure that promotions are so difficult to get, for making sure that it's so hard to transition from a blue-collar job to a white-collar job, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, for making sure that pension plans become worse and 401ks become more volatile. Hey, what up, Book Blaze? Thank you. Eat the fucking rich. Yes, eat the fucking rich, my friend. Dude, Book Blaze, we got our biggest super chat ever tonight, $99. Had to wait 5 minutes, but the Sun Tzu quote is, if you know your enemy and you know yourself, you need not fear the result of battles. There you go. Thank you so much for providing me with the actual Sun Tzu quote. I really do appreciate it. Yes, if you know your enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. As in, you can win every battle with which you participate with a deep knowledge of yourself and a deep knowledge of your enemy. If you know those two things, you are guaranteed a victory, basically. The only thing that can defeat you in that situation is pride. Haughtiness. Bro, I love making money. Just work all the hours you want, invest well, start business, become rich. I mean, yeah, you definitely should have used more commas, but I do think I get what you're trying to say. That's the thing, though. You realize you're in a rat race. You're in a fucking rat race, and I am too. And we both recognize probably on some level that we're part of a fucking rat race, but that's what it is. We're both trying to scrape together enough fucking money through all the donkey work that we're expected to do to keep this society running to eventually be able to start our own business and invest some of that money into the stock market, the totally legal gambling station that's available to all citizens over the age of 18, in other words. And that's the American dream, right? Invest some of your money in the stock market, invest a little bit of it in starting your own business and getting your own income stream that's not dependent on someone else's, and then buy your own house so you've got your own land that's not subject to someone else's rent payment or whatever, and all their upkeep costs and all that shit. That's the American dream, but it's a fucking rat race. It's a rat race that's been made more complicated and more dangerous every fucking year for the last 50 years. It's a rat race, and at this point, the rats are getting pretty bedraggled. We're getting pretty fucking bedraggled. We're like, a lot of us are fat because we eat horrible fucking diets and we're asked to do jobs that don't give us nearly enough physical exercise, but that demand 8, 12, 16 hours of our fucking constant attention in order to do. So they scream out for these types of high calorie, high sugar, high caffeine kind of diets. And like, this society is fucked up. This society is diseased. And when people don't see it, when people refuse to fucking see it, it boggles my mind, bro. It blows my fucking mind out of my head when I think about how people refuse to acknowledge the many and varied fucking flaws and diseases that this country is suffering from, that this society is suffering from. We are showing all of the signs of a population that has been spread too fucking thin. Too much has been asked of us and too little reward has been given. And shit's about to hit the fan as a result of it. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next week, not this year. But at some point within my lifetime, people are, in fact, I'll put it even closer. At some point within the next 5 years, people are going to get sick to death of this shit because it just keeps ramping up. It just keeps getting worse. Every fucking administration. That can't go on forever. That's not infinitely sustainable. Eventually, the people rise up against that kind of thing. Yes, I'm in a rat race, but I'm winning this shit. 18, I have 50K in assets, about to buy land in town to build my house. I do it all myself because I have useful skills. Yeah, but that's the thing, bro. You think you're winning the rat race because you've got $50,000 in assets. You realize that that's less than the average, that's less than the average baby boomer has. Not even talking like income, anything else. We're just talking strictly, if you're over the age of 65 right at this moment, you probably have more than the person who just made that comment in chat. You probably have more than $50,000 in assets because you probably have a house. And if you have a house in this market, it's worth way more than 50 grand. I can guarantee it. It would have to be the shittiest, most fucking broke down house in the middle of God's great nowhere to be worth less than 100 grand in this fucking seller's marketplace that we've got right now for land. So like, you say you're winning. I say, I've got more in assets than you. Not me personally, but my family, Like I live on a homestead. We've got, a little over 2 acres, I think. Now, most of it's not usable right now. But before you even take into account the value added by the residence, the barn, the multiple outbuildings, the container garden, the tilled garden, before you take into any account any of that shit, the land by itself in this market would be worth probably 60 grand. So, if you're winning, I'm winning, and look at me. Look at the outbuilding I'm sitting in, Do you stream on Instagram too? No. The only social media I have right now is YouTube. My next question to you is, do you think you're a good person? You know what? To some people, I'm an amazing person. In some people's story, I am the person who saved their ass when nobody else came through. I'm the person who had food for them and had a blunt for them when nobody else did. I'm the person with whom they had so many wonderful adventures. And for other people, I'm the fucking devil in their story. I'm the person who is the reason why their life got all fucked up and took a completely different direction. And they will never forgive me for that, or they didn't forgive me for that for a very long time. And the wound has since healed, I think whether or not I'm a good person is really to be determined by the people whose lives I've touched. And I don't think I can speak for them. What's your views on Lily Tino? I don't know who that is. That was a nice sidestep to the question. Senator Armstrong said the same thing about the rot going deep. It does. Why do people get so mad at one another for their gender identities? People are suffering and dying every moment, and yet these swine care more about what's in a stranger's pants. Idiocy, I say, occurs. I think you're getting a bit hellfire and brimstone about it, but yes, I do agree in principle. People care way too much about what's in my pants and what may or may not be in my fucking bra at any given moment than they do about little children being blown up, like blown to bits, or crushed under building and their parents have to dig their bodies out of the rubble. They care more about my fucking gender identity than they do about their own stagnant wages. They care more about my gender identity than they do all of their manufacturing jobs and all of the decent jobs being shipped overseas and all of the other jobs being gatekept to Nepo babies and people who can afford to go to college for 15 years, aka more Nepo babies. There's about a million things in this country more important than my gender identity, and yet that's all so many people can think or talk about. Consider for a moment whether maybe that's in furtherance of something. Consider who might benefit from that arrangement. Hey, I've seen a few of your streams now, and I've noticed that you vape a lot, and I just hope that you're doing okay physically and mentally. God loves you. I love you. Well, hey, I vape a lot. I think partly it's a nervous habit. I think a lot of it's just like an oral fixation. And, some of it's just the desire to look cool, honestly. No, I'm just kidding. But it is definitely a crippling nicotine addiction for sure. Do you think vapes are addictive or unhealthy? Obviously, they're both. And I'm going to keep doing them because I'm addicted to nicotine. But I will put it down for a second. Hypothetically, since you believe you're a good person, do you mind going through the commandments with me? No, but you'll have to provide them because I don't remember them off the top of my head. But I don't judge what is or is not a good person on the basis of the 10 Commandments. I think good and evil are subjective determinations that every person has to decide for themselves and does decide for themselves whether they think they do or not. Every single human being has their own personal life philosophy that determines what they think of as good and evil. As proof of this, I present the entirety of fucking Christian church, like the entirety of Christendom, like all of Christendom proves that this is true, because every fucking Christian sect has its own specific ideology, and every member of those sects has its own ideas about how their particular preacher in their particular church interprets this particular and that particular Bible passage. But it becomes even more obvious once you start looking at secularists who don't even claim to adhere to one solid, simplified moral framework. People like me. At least you aren't using chewing tobacco. That's such a gross habit. I agree, dude. At least I'm not fucking chewing, dude. Why not go through the Be Noble truths? This just seems like a gotcha scenario. It's definitely a gotcha, but it's not going to get me because I don't define those things. Like I don't think that everything in the 10 Commandments has everything to do with being good, But yes, we can go through them. not trying to sound rude, but there are places that can help you with addiction. I've had multiple addictions and made a safety plan and support system. Man, I ain't gonna go I ain't gonna go to rehab for a nicotine addiction, bro. I'm not going to rehab for a nicotine addiction, my friend. Do you have chickens on your homestead? I love chickens. Yes, I do have chickens. 8 Noble Truths. It's the Buddhist dogmatic rule system. Ooh, that could be cool. So by who or what sets that standard of being good or bad? Every single human being sets that standard based on what they feel, based on what they see as justice. And that view is assembled from the religion that they're raised in, the philosophies that they read, and most importantly of all, the parents that raise them and the conversations that they have over the course of their lives. That does more to shape a person's attitudes and what they see as good and bad, right and wrong, than any supposedly strict moral system in the Bible does. Because the Bible is written to be interpreted and reinterpreted endlessly and forever. The Bible is written sufficiently vaguely to where certain things in it can be, for example, the admonition against homosexuality featured in Leviticus is popularly thought to be a mistranslation that is actually supposed to be an admonition against pedophilia. And that's just one example of a way that a verse is taken completely different by one set of Christians than another set of Christians. There's also an admonition in Leviticus about not growing 2 crops in the same furrow. Well, a lot of Christian sects define that as, well, a furrow is a row. So that just means you plant solid rows if you have a garden or something like that. You don't break them up into multiple plants. You don't plant companion plants and things like that. But you can define it differently and allow that sort of thing by defining either by defining a furrow differently or by defining a crop differently. Like, oh, well, you can't grow two different kinds of crop in the same furrow, but one of these is just an ornamental, or one of these is a vegetable. It's not a crop. So definitions and semantics are the way that Christians set themselves apart from one another. And ultimately, those distinctions don't seem that important because they're pretty minor on the whole, right? But the wider scope of human morality includes all kinds of ideas, all kinds of conceptions about how reality may or may not work. So based on what they feel, if I were to wake up one day feeling like I was gay or bi, is that right or wrong? I don't think it has a moral dimension, because you being gay or bi doesn't affect anyone else. I mean, it affects the people you might date, I guess, and that it opens you up to possibly asking them out at some point. But it doesn't, like, you coming out as gay, bi, pan, whatever, it doesn't matter. It doesn't make some big difference in other people's lives. It's not some big change you have to prep everybody for and, get their consent on. What is your opinion on trans surgery for any person that is still a minor? Following a prior message, I think people don't care about gender identity. They care about this question and just wrongfully associate the two. Yeah, I tend to agree with you, honestly. I think a lot of people... And honestly, I still think the question's a fucking distraction, because ultimately, dude, you're talking about such a small percentage of people. Such a small percentage just of trans people, and trans people are already a tiny percentage of the population. So you might be talking about maybe 10 kids a year at max. We're talking such a minuscule fucking amount of children that it beggars belief that it's a topic of national conversation, right? But I think if you're going to have any standpoint on it that makes sense within the framework that I've presented so far, I would say, am I okay with them? You said surgeries, right? You said surgeries for any person that is still a minor. I guess I would be okay with it between the ages of like 16 and 18. I would be willing to consider a waiver process in that. Like, I would be willing to say, okay, well, we're just going to open it up to, well, now you can go through a process to get a waiver, where a judge will assess, okay, how long has this person been on HRT? How long have they been on whatever. But ultimately, I don't think you would even have to deal with it because, from what I was talking about earlier was having people not able to start HRT proper until they're like 16. If that's the case, most doctors want you to be on HRT for like 3 years before they even do a sex change operation. And so you're talking about a kid who'd be 19 by that point. So they'd be a grown-ass adult. They would no longer be a kid. I don't know that they'd be a grown-ass adult, but they'd be an adult. They'd be able to make their own decisions and legally empowered to do so at that point. So it's very unlikely and rare for minors to get gender affirmation surgery. I think the youngest case was 14 because they had tried to do it DIY and needed to be rushed to the hospital to try and help. It was 16 to 18, but it's very hard to get that at those ages. Oh yeah, 100%. 100%. And cases like the one you mentioned with that 14-year-old are part of the reason why I think queer advocates need to be kind of careful about the messaging that we have, right? I think that until society here's the thing. I genuinely do care about people having better outcomes with their healthcare. And I don't care what that I don't care what that does to the statistical amount of trans people that are in the country. Like, if more people are able to come out as trans as a result of it, great. If more people figure out that they're actually not trans as a result of it, that's fine too, Ultimately, though, I don't think it's going to make much of a difference. And I think it's something that, as of right now, our society cares a whole lot about this issue, and I think that we need to find some kind of human solution that acknowledges the fact that someone can realize that they are trans from a very young age and can socially transition at any point in their childhood. So we need a human solution that takes that into account, but also takes into account that a person is not in the best headspace to be making life-changing decisions when they're that young, I think we need a solution that recognizes that and provides some kind of framework for allowing gender affirming care to happen for a minor that needs it and for whom it's appropriate. And also, I don't know, I think the point I'm driving at is you're not doing trans kids any service. If you're a queer advocate and your thing is kids should just be able to get their gender affirming care, shouldn't be this big a deal, you should just be able to do it. You don't want to go too hard on that tip, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, because you don't want to get people in this mindset where someone's 14, their hormones are raging through them, and they think the only way I'm ever going to be able to do this is if I DIY it, And I don't know, it's just kind of it's a shitty situation we're in, right? Because a lot of the rhetoric that I'm talking about, a lot of the really fiery rhetoric out of queer advocates is only happening because of the harsh, hardcore anti-trans bent that's coming out of the conservative right. So it's like a direct reaction to that. And how do you reconcile these two things, these two very different ideas about how to handle this I don't want to call it a problem, but this object in the discourse. I'm ready for a proper third gender. We can figure it out later. Yeah, dude, I'm fine with it. Let's just have a third gender. There were some Native American tribes that supposedly did. Why can't we? I understand, but question, why would a born male not want to be a born male with superior physical strength by nature? Because maybe there's more to life than being physically strong, my friend. I guess if you're a cis man, you're never going to have to question your gender. It sounds like you figured it out. So it doesn't matter? Okay, so now I'm going to ask you another question. If, once again, there was such a thing as God or higher being of power, and he said that it was wrong, is it? I guess that depends on what that God constitutes. But even if that made it objectively wrong, that wouldn't make it that would not stop people from doing it, and that would not it would not inform anything about human life. People would keep on fucking whoever they want to fuck, even if God himself came down and said, I don't like that. People would keep on doing it. And so once again, it would be human morality you would have to contend with, not biblical morality, not God's morality. It would be human morality, once again, that you would be forced to contend with. So, sure, if God came down, maybe it would change some people's minds. Maybe that would establish on the record what is and isn't good and bad. But I don't think that that would make a whole lot of difference. There have been a shit ton of documents in the history of the planet that have attempted to establish what is and is not good or bad, and none of them have been particularly successful, because there will always be people who see your morality and see your delicate fucking system of ideals and wishes and hopes and want to dash them for whatever reason. Some of them want to dash them because they see the flaws in them, and they see how they corrupt the people within them, and they see how they manipulate and exploit the other people outside of the system. But some people want to just destroy that system, have something to destroy. The reasons vary, but somebody's going to come along and see it eventually. We are imperfect, but we are the most superior species to ever exist. Based on what? Based on what? Our complete trashing of this planet? What makes us the most superior species? The fact that we were able to invent plastic and infect the world with its infect the world with its what's the word I'm looking for? Infect the world with its petroleum grip. Does that make us the superior species? Because we were able to invent electricity and blanket this planet in big ugly power wires? Is that what makes us the superior species? Is it because we burn horribly noxious is it because we produce horribly noxious fumes burning fossil fuels in order to ship our goods all over this planet? Is that what makes us superior? I'm a cis male, and being born with physical strength over the women of my life has not brought me happiness. Yeah. No, it doesn't bring most people happiness. But good luck convincing like a hardcore advocate for the current system of gender. Good luck convincing someone of that is a hardcore advocate of the traditional system of gender. Dinosaurs had a longer run than humans have had on this planet. Oh yeah, 100%. I get where you're coming from. Well then, if you get where I'm coming from, how can you possibly say that human beings are the most superior species on this planet? I think the most superior species on this planet would be able to figure out how to live within their planet alongside the animals and creatures and plants and all the things that occupy that planet. I think that the most superior being on any given life-supporting planet should be the being most suited for living there. And human beings are not the most suited for our planet. We are demonstrating that just by fucking it up as much as we are. We are horrible to our environment. We're like rabbits that have been abandoned on an island with nothing but grass. And eventually, we will starve to death. We will either starve to death or be starved by those who are keeping the vast majority of the resources from ever finding their way into any of our mouths. Gender is a social construct. Men used to wear wigs, makeup, and effeminate attire, and girls wore blue. I like to describe gender as a performance that everyone is in, but most don't know it. Yeah, and that's a great way to describe it. I describe gender as all of the behaviors we associate with sex on the basis of what we perceive someone's sex to be. So all of the other little assumptions that come with hearing someone is a man, or hearing that someone is a woman, or hearing that someone is non-binary. All the assumptions that come with that, that's gender. All the things that flash into your head, that's gender. So sorry, but dinosaurs wouldn't have had a better run than us. The human body is so genetically evolved and is still evolving. Don't doubt the strength, and more importantly, wisdom and stamina of humans. Really, the only place where we are demonstrated to excel in that is stamina. When it comes to strength, we are not nearly the strongest animals on the planet. It's our tools that make us strong. Our tools make us the strongest animal on the planet, but you separate a human being from their tools, and you are looking at a naked, hairless ape. You are looking at an ape less equipped to survive than any other ape. We are the only ape that requires tools as a function of our survival. We are the only ape that requires tools as a function of our survival. Do I need to say that a third time? We, human beings, are the only apes on the planet whose survival hinges upon our use of tools. Every other primate on this planet can survive without them, can figure out a way. Not us. We are utterly reliant on our tools, utterly reliant on our technology, utterly. Even those of us living in primitive ways, utterly reliant on our use of tools. It's our IQ that makes us strong? No. Not unless you mean our technology, which once again, yeah, sure, our technology makes us strong. Separate us from that technology. We're some of the least equipped animals on this planet. And keep in mind, at this point, Western society, or more appropriately, industrial society, is predicated right now on the consumption of a very limited resource. Very limited. We have an obsession with building more and more ICE engines that require oil, petroleum, in order for the motors to run, and requires some of that oil to be refined into gasoline in order for them to run. And until we get over that addiction, we are on a crash course to doom. We're literally on, it's like we're on a plane. And this is a metaphor I got from a book I've read called Ishmael by Daniel Quinn. Civilization as it stands right now is like a plane, and the engines have gone out, but we don't know that they've gone out. Nobody on the plane can tell that they've gone out. There might be like a flight engineer, maybe two, that have figured out that we're going down, but they don't want to tell anybody because they know the panic is going to ensue. Lots of people are going to die, and any recovery attempt that is going to be marred by that. So they don't want to say anything, but they do notice. They keep looking at the instruments, and they keep seeing the altitude bleeding off. The speed's holding, but the altitude's bleeding off. They're at flight level 300 right now, but they're going to be at they're going to be at flight level 30 real quick, and it's going to be a pretty fucking bumpy ride once they get down there, because then everybody's going to know. But as of right now, nobody knows, right? As of right now, we're gliding. We're on a glide slope right now. We're in a perfect fucking position to just expend all that energy that we got using our engines to get us as high as we did. And now we're on the downslope, right? Now we're on the downslope. But like I said, too few of us realize that we're on the downslope. So it doesn't matter that we're on the downslope because nobody realizes. We're all just in the back partying. We're all in the back partying as the plane goes down. Eventually, it will fall to the ground unless we figure out a way to restart those engines. The problem is, in our metaphor, the plane is out of gas because the plane being out of gas represents our society having reached peak oil, and industrial society having reached peak oil, and the fact that we're now fighting a losing battle against a limited resource. And maybe our engines haven't gone out quite yet, but we know that we're going to run out of gas before we can get to another airport. That's the problem, right? That's the big problem. And what do we do about that problem is the big thing. That's the big question in everybody's mind. But because too few people are aware of what's happening, nobody's acting in furtherance of saving us from this fate, And I guess if we were going to expand the metaphor, we'd say that the flight engineers are trying to get people to pay attention to what's going on, but nobody's listening to them because they look outside and the glide slope is, everything's set up so perfect that to them, it just looks like they're descending. It's just a normal descent. And the captain hasn't come over the PA yet and said, we're in free fall. We're not in free fall. We're gliding on a slope, but we're not gonna make it to another airport, folks. Captain hasn't come on and said that. Captain hasn't come on and said, hey, we're going to run out of gas before we get to the next airport, and we will have to make a crash landing somewhere. And so, because the captain hasn't come on and said it, nobody's listening to the nerdy-ass flight scientists or whatever. Fuck those guys. And so, we continue hurtling towards our doom, pretending we are unaware completely of the fact that we are slowly but surely running out of oil, slowly but surely running out of the ability to continue projecting ourselves forward, but we keep on going. I'm going to go because I'm tired, but I hope you have an amazing day, Phoebe. It was nice chatting. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. By the way, there's 100 people in here. Make sure you guys hit that like button. It really does help. Every single time you hit that like button is another chance for this stream to find even more people and for more people to find their way into the chat, which helps make things more interesting, obviously. If man gone, will there be hope for gorilla? With gorilla gone, will there be hope for man? Yes. Classic quote from Ishmael. Classic quote. Now, the real question is that a koan? Because the pupil in Ishmael describes that as a koan, but I don't think it necessarily fits the definition of a koan. I don't think it's long enough. Not exactly true. There was a guy that made an engine that ran on water, and because of the water cycle, that would never run out. Yeah, but that engine that runs on water does so by using, as far as I know, it does so by creating hydrogen and oxygen out of the water, and then firing an internal combustion engine on the basis of that hydrogen. But the problem is that in order to generate hydrogen using water, you have to expend energy, and you expend more energy splitting those water molecules with electrolysis. You spend more energy doing that than you would, than you get from burning the resulting hydrogen. So it's an energy intensive process that doesn't really offer any benefits. You know, it would be one thing if, like, yeah, it's energy intensive, but once you get them split, man, that hydrogen can take you anywhere. But it's not. We're going to have to find a way to split water molecules in a way that does not require the active intervention of massive amounts of electrical energy. As of right now, that's what's required to make hydrogen out of water. And as long as that remains the case, it's not going to make a whole lot of sense if we have a grid that is completely renewable, right? Because otherwise, you're just robbing Peter to pay Paul. Otherwise, you're just kicking the can. You're just deferring the responsibility, basically. And I'm very, very much against deferred responsibility solutions when it comes to global warming and climate change as an issue. I don't think that we're going to get anywhere on these issues by deferring responsibility to different organizations and to different processes. I don't think that's the way to do it. I think that the biggest thing that needs to happen, honestly, even before we focus on the ice engines and all that shit, and I think the biggest thing that needs to happen is our power grid needs to be 100% renewable. It needs to be 100% renewable, and I'm tentative on nuclear. There are ways I think nuclear could be done safely. I just don't think that has been done very often. Well, at least it's been done badly enough times for me to be wary of the technology. But hydropower, I mean, a well-designed dam typically doesn't fail, and a dam that fails typically produces way less fucking damage than a nuke disaster does. A nuclear disaster can irradiate hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people, can completely destroy hundreds of acres of land, thousands of acres of land sometimes. It's just bad news bears. But I mean, a flood from a dam breaking, yeah, that sucks. It damages the ecosystem. It's not great. Can wipe out some buildings, can kill some people. But once the flood waters recede, once the dam's repaired, once things are set to rights, it's more or less like it never even happened. Shit grows back. Nothing's irradiated. It's not damaged for the next 2,000 years. It's not uninhabitable for the next 10,000 years. So hydropower, okay, cool. Wind power, okay, cool. I think there's ways that we could incorporate wind power into all kinds of urban environments too. I just don't think there's a whole lot of research being done into it. But I think that once people realize that that's a possibility, once people realize maybe some ways it can be done efficiently, I think you'll start to see some dynamic wind-based power generation systems being employed in urban environments. Solar energy, I think, is a really promising technology, especially because it can also be placed in so many urban environments and could, in theory, reduce energy costs massively by providing a layer of material that is not just generating energy, but that is actually taking a lot of the energy of the sun that would be otherwise hitting those buildings or the roofs of those buildings or whatever. So it has like a double effect, you know? It's great. Hi, I'm a trans woman and have been in HRT for 1 year and 5 months, and I have been hiding from it with my dad, which is the hardest, and I'm 34 already, and I'm Hispanic. Yeah, well, that is not a great position to be in, honestly. If I were in your position, I'd be trying everything I could to be getting out of my parents' home, if that's where you're living, and it sounds like you probably are if you're still worried about what he thinks, because that is just no way to live. You should not have to hide from you shouldn't have to hide from someone you live with or from someone in proximity to you who you actually are. Just full stop. You shouldn't have to hide that kind of thing. It's not right that some people expect their family members and the people that they love to hide those things about themselves. Let me see here. Speed C sent 2 messages. Message part 2, once again, thanks for... Oh, okay. Let me see here. Let me see message part 1. I was originally, when I saw the stream, right away write something offensive, but I felt the need to witness to you and ask you some basic questions. Thanks for responding. I know that you could care less, but I wanted to tell you that Jesus is real and every knee will bow and say that Jesus is Lord. Well, I don't think you're right, but are you going to convince me? No. Am I going to convince you? No. So let's just smoke a joint together and be homies, goddammit, because you know what? We ain't getting nowhere on this religious talk. It's never going to happen. It's a fool's errand to try and make some kind of sense. Like if you're a Christian, you're never going to fucking be able to look at things from my perspective unless you start looking at them from my perspective to begin with. You're going to have to be willing to come at it from that standpoint to understand why some people find religion so absurd, why some people find the strict biblical idea of Christianity so laughable. And I'm not going to be able to understand where you're coming from unless I'm willing to put myself in the shoes of someone who genuinely believes that every knee will bow. And I don't, you know. I maybe I grew up thinking that and believing that, but I don't believe that way anymore. All the alternatives you were saying require petroleum. They require petroleum in manufacture, maybe, but they don't require petroleum in terms of maintenance. Maybe they require petroleum right now in terms of maintenance because so much of our engine capacity is based on petroleum, right? But that's something that could be fucking worked on if this country's power grid and other countries' power grid that are developed countries, if it was electric based, right? Like the main fucking reason that it's so difficult to justify getting a bunch of electric fucking construction equipment or factory equipment or whatever, which by the way, most factory equipment is already electric, but the main reason why in some applications an engine is still used either to produce a little more power or to drive these big heavy machines is because as of right now, most even developed countries don't have an electrical grid capable of supporting mass manufacturing and mass earth moving that is like plug-in hybrid or full electric. But that is something that is coming. Caterpillar like just this year or last year or something like that came out with a big ass dump truck that is all electric, completely fucking electric, and it's massive. It's huge. So if that can exist, that tells me any old fucking thing can be made electric. And the fact that a lot of these machines we're thinking about when we think of things that use a lot of oil to run and obviously consume a lot of oil in the form of gasoline or diesel, a lot of them already are basically hybrid electric. They run an engine in order to run a hydraulic generator, or like a generator and a hydraulic system. And the generator is used to operate electric components, and the hydraulic system is used for turning the tracks, for advancing the tracks, or like usually it's used for advancing the tracks, turning the cab and the boom, and obviously all the mechanics on the boom are usually all powered by hydraulics. But like the cab controls and stuff like that, they're all powered by electricity. Radiator fans and things like that, usually powered by electricity. So there's plenty of things in this that have to be powered by electricity already. They're already hooked up to a pretty big generator to do. And in some of these applications, electric motors are used. So there are already machines that basically the only thing they use the hydraulics for is to move the boom. They don't use it to move to advance the tracks. They don't use it to move the cab or anything like that. All of that shit's electric. So it just starts to not make sense that we're all that we're expected to just endlessly rely on petroleum and petroleum products for the rest of humanity's existence, when there is another alternative. There is a better way things could be done. And I would argue that the problem is not just we're using petroleum. The problem is that we are reliant on it as a fuel. It's one thing to use petroleum in the manufacture of motor oil. That's one thing. In theory, we could come up with a technology by which we could recycle that motor oil and restore it to usable purpose. That is not something that happens when you burn it up as a fuel. Please turn to God and repent. I'm not going to, but thank you for the concern. A single wind turbine uses 12,000 gallons of oil, petroleum per year, not counting grease. Yeah, how much do 100 cars, how much gas do 100 cars consume over the course of a year? How many barrels of oil does that take, you know? And are you seriously saying that a system wherein you're just burning this up as fuel? So what is your plan? Let me just ask you that, because this is something that is not ever addressed. What is your plan for when humanity runs out of oil? Are you, you realize that it is a finite resource, right? Hey, Phoebe, would you say gender identity is identifying more with the societal roles, expectations, and stereotypes, I guess, typically associated with a particular gender? I guess, yeah, basically. Finding more in common with those ideas and those forms of expression. Once again, thank you for being real. LOL. Have a good rest of your day. Well, thank you. Yeah, I try to be real if nothing else, you know? I can be nothing else but myself, so I try to be myself. If gender identity is based on societal expectations, what's the difference between a feminine man and a woman, or a tomboy and a man? Sometimes I don't know myself, honestly. I don't think the lines are very clearly delineated. I think that's kind of the problem with gender, right? I think that, if anything, trans people are an outgrowth of an overly rigid system of gender expression. Yeah, what is the difference, I think you're asking, between a feminine woman, between a feminine man and a trans woman, and a masculine woman and a trans man? And I guess, okay, well, we're back. I'm sorry for that. My phone died for some reason, even though I had it hooked up to a charger. But it's hooked up to a charger again, so we are back. Hi ho, it's off to work we go. Do 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 do. Welcome back. Thanks. So somebody earlier was asking, what's the difference between a feminine man and a trans woman, or a masculine woman and a trans man? And I think it really is just a matter of degrees, but ultimately, it's one of the things that makes gender needlessly complex. One of the many things. And it just makes me think of this line in a song. It's one of my favorite songs in the whole world. And I'll sing it for you guys. See, the problem I have with gender is that I'm not even sure whether I know what I mean when I say I'm a girl, because I know I am one. Because boys can wear dresses and makeup. Anyone can wear whatever they want. Girls can have short hair and muscles. And that's where I run into trouble. Because if I use she pronouns, well, what does that mean? Am I reinforcing a gender binary that I don't believe in and I don't adhere to? I tell you I'm a woman. What's that supposed to tell you? Gender doesn't tell you a damn thing about me. Doesn't tell you what I like, doesn't tell you how I think. And really, that whole song is just an admonition against needlessly gendering things and discouraging people from acting certain ways because that's not masculine or that's not ladylike, you know? And the reason why that sort of thing is old and done with and needs to be done away with is because it's a needless system of behavioral compulsion. It's a system of behavioral compulsion that only exists to make certain people's lives easier when it comes to their interpreting the events around them. And I don't think that that is a noble enough goal to put a bunch of trans people into needless harm and to put a bunch of people because honestly, I don't think it's just trans people. I think that to some degree, I think most people are inconvenienced at some point in their lives, usually quite a few times, by the firm, strict ideas of gender that are imposed upon all of us by our collective agreement not to completely fucking overturn this system, which is one of the few fucking things about our society that we could do without, you know, drawing any ire from the police, you know? Back, not sure what happened. My fucking phone died. I don't know. It was apparently not connected well or some shit. I have no fucking clue. I don't pretend to know. The stream is like 69. Yeah, I know, dude. 69. I think the biological sex and gender identity are connected, and that someone who relates more to traits of the opposite gender is simply expressing masculine or feminine qualities. I mean, gender and sex are different things. Are they connected? Yeah, but your assumptions about what someone's sex might be are entirely based on your perceptions of their gender, right? So you see someone you assume to be a woman on the basis of their wearing women's clothes and having a womanly hairstyle and maybe even having a feminine face, right? And so you assume because you've seen what gender they express themselves as or what gender they're expressing that like in that moment, and you assume what their sex is, but you could be totally wrong. You could be looking at a really well passing trans woman, you know? Are gender, sex, and identity all different things? Well, identity is just a word that we're using here to describe these different things. It's just a modifier, but sex and gender are different things. Sex refers to biological characteristics like penis, vagina, testicles, etc. Gender refers to all of the behavioral qualities that we typically associate with a given sex, but that don't necessarily need to be associated with them, that aren't intrinsically connected to them. Does that make sense? Like there's nothing in the human brain that automatically relates a dress to a vagina. Like that's not some intrinsic instinctual thing. That's something that society decided at some point in the distant past, you know? Oh, Gamercat's fine. I didn't see anything too objectionable on that one. That one seems fine. Let me see here. Okay, the second message didn't make nearly as much sense as the first, I grant you. But, anyway. I thought sex was a physical act, but I've seen it used. It's interchangeable. That's why I asked. Well, I mean, like sexual intercourse, often shortened to sex, is a physical act. But sex, as far as like biological sex, that just refers to whether or not you have a penetrative sex organ or a sex organ that accepts penetration, right? That's what sex is, ultimately. Man, if we can get one more like, we can get up to 70. That would be beautiful. Damn it. I know this shit has some juice in it still. I can see it in there. Well, in my transition, I noticed that most of my body is changed on my body shape and appealing more feminine, and I'm naming myself as Sophie. Well, you know, that's gonna happen. You know, that's what's supposed to happen on HRT. But congratulations. Damn it. Maybe this thing is just out of fucking juice. Oh well. We know what to do about that. We know how to repack a bowl, don't we, friends? We know how to get what we want out of the experiences we have. You need to hold our hands. Can if you want, though. You can if you so desire. Okay. Hey, we had 70 likes. Look at that. Isn't that nice? Look at us go. Sometimes I get symptoms of HRT, dealing with anxiety and lightheadedness. Probably, yeah. I mean, monitoring your water intake and your sleep is definitely a good way to make sure that you're doing things the healthiest way you can. Oh, shit. Oh, it's hot. It's not even hot, it's just hot in here. It's needlessly fucking hot. I'm guessing I'm somewhere in the region around Texas? No, not quite. I'm in the South, but not in Texas. Down in the West Texas town of El Paso, I fell in love with a Mexican girl. Pretty sure I got the notes on that wrong. Down in the West Texas town of El Paso, down in the West Texas town of El Paso, I fell in love with a Mexican girl. Down in the West Texas. Down in the West Texas town of El Paso, I fell in love with... Yeah, see, I know I'm getting the words on that wrong, or not the words, but the what's the fucking word for it? The melody? The notes? Yeah, something like that. Do 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 do. California. It's the edge of the world and all of Western civilization. The sun may rise in the east, but at least it settles in a final location. It's understood that Hollywood sells Californication. Thanks for answering my questions. I'm not trying to be rude at all. I value your perspective. Well, thanks for asking them. Because it's participation like yours that makes these streams even possible, because they are entirely chat-based. We're trying to have something like a conversation here. I remember listening to that song. Oh, yeah, I think that was on everybody's playlist at some point, right? Little girls from Sweden dream of silver screen rotations. Psychic spies from China trying to steal your mind's illusions. And if you have these kind of dreams, it's Californication. It's the edge of the world and all of Western civilization. The sun may rise in the east. Hot Dog Man Brian. What a name, bro. That person probably just has a hot dog cart, but that's a fun name. I hope they have a hot dog cart. And I hope their hot dogs are good. I hope they're delicious. I hope they're cooked in chicken broth. Or beef broth. Train's coming. I don't have a hot dog cart. I just needed a name for Club Penguin, so Oh, nice. Right on. Hey, I guess that works too. I imagined you as a hot dog vendor, bro. I had a whole life story for you in my head. In my head, you were a hot dog vendor from Kansas who's just waiting for his chance to make it in the big city. Dude, somebody made fun of me for that the other day, and I was like, that's fucking retarded. That's so dumb. I remember you mentioned hobbies, and being trans, I love to RC and look feminine too. I surprise people when they see a pretty trans woman playing with RC cars. Oh, okay, yeah. Now I get what you mean. Yeah. I love RC as a hobby too. Although I never got into the big, like, custom made steel tube frame, like basically a little car, like literally like just a miniaturized car or truck. But I do like RC stuff. I would love to see more exotic RC stuff. Like I know tank RC is becoming more of a thing, like remote control tanks. I want to see so much more of that. I would love to see like whole ass recreated battles using RC tanks. That would be fucking tremendous. Or at least see like which I think this already happens. I think there are already um, like airsoft clubs and shit that offer like um, a micro armored division segment or whatever, where you can have tanks compete against one another and shit. But I think that just needs to be made into like a whole fucking hobby of its own, bro. Because that's the kind of RC shit that appeals to me at this point in my life. The world is so big, and I am so tiny. Do you reckon the world felt bigger or smaller back in the day? Like before we lived in such a global society, do you reckon society like do you reckon people in individual societies felt as though they were on a pretty like in a it's a pretty small world, you know? Or do you think that they felt like they were adrift in a giant world and just like a little tiny part of it? I guess I'm just sitting here thinking like, man, I am such a me and everybody else though, that's the thing. Any given individual person is such a minuscule part of the machinery that makes all of this work. And in some ways, I think that that's kind of beautiful and wonderful and reassuring. But in other ways, I wonder if maybe it's not something that's born out of capitalism, kind of forcing us to not really know one another, kind of forcing us into positions that make us integral, but only insofar as our participation in a team goes, you know? So few people have jobs that are like, yeah, I mean, the village more or less depends on you or one of your kids being able to do the thing you do. Very few jobs like that anymore. Almost none. And like I said, you know, there's multiple sides to that. Not just philosophically, but practically. Like, there's a very real safety consideration to be made about the fact that, you know, like the fact that none of those jobs exist anymore because they're all um, so much redundancy in each of those industries and what became of those jobs. But part of that's just like a safety thing, especially when it comes to public utilities and stuff like that. You've got to have a bunch of people doing the same job ultimately, and a lot of them not spending a whole lot of their time doing anything. So that way, if things do go bad, you've got the people there to make sure that things start running good again. I don't know what that was. That was a weird sound. New sub here. What topic do you feel most passionate about? Food, honestly. Probably food. Like, if I just had to be completely fucking real with you. I don't know that sitting around listening to my fat ass talk about fucking greasy ass food all night would be the most entertaining thing. So it doesn't come up that often as a topic. Because there are other things I'm definitely really passionate about as well. But I think when it comes right down to it, I think that's ultimately where my passion lies. You know, as far as like, if I have a basis from which I don't even know how to put it, right? Because it's not like my political philosophy has much to do with my ideas about food, but in a way, my ideas about food are informed by my political philosophy and vice versa. So I don't know. I really don't know how to quantify questions like this sometimes because it's hard for me to pick like a number one in a lot of ways. But I think if I had to like look back at my own life and think, what have I learned the most about? Like, what do I actually know the most about? What can I actually tell you the most about and be backed up by people in the chat? It's food. 100%. 110% it's food. I can tell you what the Maillard reaction is. I can tell you what a bechamel is. I can tell you what a roux is. I can tell you what the Cajun Trinity is. I can tell you, I could give you like a dozen different great recipes for a pork butt. I could give you a dozen different great recipes for fried chicken, all of them slightly different in composition and texture. I could give you, 3 different recipes for mixed greens, um, endless recipes for potatoes, you know. I can give you recipes for potatoes that you never even heard of before, you know. So when I really think about it, like, what else am I to say in response to that question? Like, yeah, food. And I think a lot of things that I do outside of food ultimately have some kind of interrelation with, even if it's hard for me to describe. Like, okay, part of my philosophy with when I cook, part of my philosophy is making sure that everyone has enough to eat, right? I have a very sort of I guess I have a very like utilitarian communist kind of idea about food when it comes to cooking. I want to make enough not just for everybody to have enough to eat, but enough to put back a little. Either we can freeze it, what everybody else doesn't eat, whatever's left in the pan, we can freeze it, or we can put it in the fridge if we think we'll have something that'll use that side again in the next week. We can put it in the fridge and use it again in a couple days. It's basically a way to fold food prep into just making your dinner, but it's a very, in my opinion, it's a sort of a communist way to think, because it's about making sure that everyone in your immediate group, everybody in your immediate unit has enough to eat, has enough calories in their belly, and has some for tomorrow, Now, maybe some would say that there's no political connotation to that, but it's it's a connotation that I see at the very least. That's relatable. Do you have a favorite recipe that's easy and tasty? I like to do an instant pot chili myself. An easy recipe. Yeah, I've got those. Plenty. All kinds. Yeah. Easy recipes. Mm-hmm. They're top secret though. Yeah, but you can know any of the hard ones. Any of the hard ones, I'll tell you. No, I don't know. I guess I've got a couple of easy recipes. Yeah. So here's an easy way to get the best ribs you've ever had in your life. Okay. So you're gonna want to start off with some kind of outdoor cooking vessel. You will hear online that you need a pellet grill smoker. You'll read online that you need a chunk smoker or a Texas style offset smoker. You don't need any of that bullshit. You don't need a lick of that bullshit. Set that shit to the side, ignore that shit, and go get the Weber out of the garage and set it up on your porch. That's what you're about to use to smoke these ribs, okay? But it doesn't even have to be a Weber either. I know what you're saying right now. You're thinking, but Phoebes, all I've got is a fucking gas grill. Me too, my friend. I've yet to smoke something on an actual smoker. Here's how I do it. So if you're doing it on a Weber, you're gonna want to figure out some kind of way that you can isolate you want to basically isolate half of that charcoal grill to not have any direct heat under it, right? So you want half of it to have some wood chunks and maybe some charcoal, but half of it to be empty. So you can do that with rocks. You can do that with a little sheet of metal that's fit in there and the ends are bent in so it can fit in there, but it can't be pushed back. There's a number of different ways that you can figure out to build something that'll keep that wood or wood or charcoal mix, right, to one side. But once you've got that done, build that up, light that on fire, let it fucking burn for a while, and let it burn down where it's just coals that are smoldering away. That's what you want for what you're trying to do here. Okay? You want that. And once you've achieved that, now we're going to go on to the next stage, which is going to be, and because this is an easy recipe, this is supposed to be an easy recipe, this is going to assume that you set some ribs out at midday, but that you didn't have time to brine them. You didn't set them out the night before and get them brining. You're getting them, ready now. So what you're going to do is you're going to find you're either going to make yourself a rub or you're going to find look over your spice shelf and find a decent barbecue rub. Most people have one on hand, even probably have a barbecue rub somewhere on your shelf. Go find it. You're going to need it. If you don't, then you're going to want about a cup of brown sugar and some delicious savory spices. What you include in here is more or less your choice. The brown sugar will take care of a lot of that barbecue flavor that barbecue is so well known for. But what else you add to it is more or less up to your choice. I would add some paprika. I would definitely add some kosher salt. I would add some of the basic Italian herbs can be kind of nice, but you don't want to put too many of those, honestly, in something like a barbecue rub. Thyme would be okay, though. Thyme can add a nice touch to pretty much any kind of meat, but I wouldn't be throwing like a bunch of rosemary or oregano in there. But you can do a little thyme and a little, if you've got diced onion, it works great here. If you don't, that's fine. Garlic powder, onion powder, both great additions. If you have a little MSG on hand, that's a great addition. And the amounts of these are all up to your taste, but you're working with a cup of brown sugar. So, start with the tablespoon and then mix it up. And after you've mixed up all of your spices in one round, make sure it's mixed up really well. And then get you a tiny little bitty spoonful of it and taste it. If that shit tastes good, okay, then you're ready. If it doesn't, then adjust your spices until you've got something that you think is going to taste all right. And now you're going to smother the fuck out of this Boston butt, not this Boston butt, that's what I'm making tomorrow. Out of these ribs, you're going to smother the absolute fuck out of them. You're going to make them all fucking dry rubbed to fuck, okay? And then you are going to take this and you are going to let it sit for 30 minutes. And then after it's sat for about 30 minutes, you're going to do that again and add a little bit more. And then you're going to put it on the smoker. And if you're using a gas grill, by the way, you just put some wood chunks and some foil packs, poke some holes in there, set it over one burner. You only need to use one burner for this. Set it over that one burner, put it on high with the lid closed until the wood is smoking real good. And then you can usually reduce it down to like a 2. And then you can put your meat on there. It will smoke a little slower if you're using that kind of method, but it does work. I've used it a bunch of times and got food safe temps every time. So yeah. But we're gonna take these ribs. We're gonna rub that homemade rub all over them. We're going to do that twice so that you get a nice even coating that doesn't just come off in the juices as it kind of sits there, and it gets a chance to absorb some of that flavor. Then you're going to put it on there, and if you've got some of your seasoning left, don't worry. Now's the time where it's going to come in handy. Mix you up a little bit of water, roughly like, I don't know, say like 3 times the amount that you've got worth of spices and seasonings, some hot water, mix that up, and now grab your turkey baster, because in like 30 minutes, you're going to want to, in fact, you might want to wait less than that, in my opinion. But I love to baste things, so maybe I overdo it. But in about 30 minutes, you're going to want to open that up for just a second, baste it on, baste it on whatever side you're doing, and then, in another 30 minutes, you'll come back over and you'll baste that side, let it sit for a minute, and then turn it over, and then baste the other side. And now is the choice. Now is the point where you have to make a choice. Actually, not now, but before you ever set the ribs on the grill, you have to make a choice. Do you want to catch the liquids and reuse them, or do you want to sacrifice them to the grill gods? If you sacrifice them to the grill gods, you will be kind of sad, because you can infuse a lot of flavor by constantly reusing that, like the drippings from the basting and everything else. It's pork, so it's constantly generating lard to add to the juices, and you just end up with this really flavorful base that you just recycle endlessly until the end of the cooking time. But anyway, let's say you've got like 3 pounds of ribs. You can usually get away with like a 2.5 hour smoke on something like that. And once it's either fork tender, or a way better way is use a meat thermometer. And I actually don't remember off the top of my head what it needs to read. So maybe that's a failure on my part, but I don't remember off the top of my head what it needs to read. But you can Google that pretty easily. Like, what do smoked ribs need to temp at? And it'll tell you. But yeah, I guess that recipe is the easiest one I know, honestly. Pretty much every other recipe I know involves like complicated shit, like making a roux and adding cream and fucking cheese and letting that come together, and like careful timings and proportions and shit like that. Or my pizza recipe, which includes the recipe for the sauce as well as the recipe for the dough. So I don't know. Like, when it comes to the things I make, almost all of them are complicated as shit. Almost all of them. But probably the easiest thing I can tell you how to do are some ribs or some no brine ribs. Can this work on chicken? Beef is almost unaffordable. Well, actually, that recipe was for baby back ribs, which baby back ribs can be really cheap. You can find them on sale at the grocery store sometimes, because they're just, they're only popular at certain times of the year. So if you can stock up on you some baby back ribs during a time of the year when they're not really being used for anything, like for example, in the wintertime, a lot of times baby back ribs will go down because nobody's throwing fucking barbecues and shit in the middle of fucking December. So that's a great time to buy your summertime meats. If you're just going to have them in the freezer anyway, you might as well buy them in the winter and then use them in the summer. But if you're looking for a recipe for chicken, you don't want to use that recipe because, well, you can use that recipe. The great thing about pork recipes is that they usually work for chicken, and chicken recipes usually work for pork. But you will get weird results if you use one with the other. Not necessarily bad results, but they can sometimes be weird results. And I would fear that that's what would happen with something like that. For chicken, I would say that the best thing you can do for a chicken is, if you've got the ability to tie it up in such a way to where it can fit in a big cast iron pot, or a big cast iron pan, do that and use that as your cooking vessel. You'll thank me later. Not only is the cleanup easier, but it's reusable. It can handle all the heat and rigors of cooking. It can handle a flame, all that shit. It's just wonderful. Please, if you have the opportunity to use cast iron for a recipe like that, use it. But yeah, for chicken, you would do things a little bit differently. Chicken doesn't have nearly as much fat on it, so merely basting it is not enough to provide it with the amount of juice that it's going to need to like properly develop all the flavors that it needs to, or to give you enough juice for basting. So in my opinion, the best thing you can do in that situation, if you're trying to do chicken, is maybe this sounds gross to some people, but it works, dude. You just gotta slather that thing with butter. Like, I'm talking slather that thing with butter. And then set a couple of butter cubes like in the pan. Set one off in the chicken. Set a butter cube on top of the chicken and kind of like poke it in there. If you can, get that butter up under the skin of the chicken and rub that through, Get that butter all up over that chicken, because that's about as much oil as you're going to get out of that chicken. You aren't going to get much more than a couple of tablespoons more oil out of a chicken than you put into it. So keep that in mind if you're smoking a chicken. It's not like pork. Pork, you can basically just rely on the lard that the pork puts off and its own natural juices, and whatever baste that you're using, or just spraying it with water even. You can trust that that will develop you enough of a basis to baste off of in a situation where you've got like a little pan that you can use to continually get more baste from. But with chicken, it's not going to produce nearly that amount of juice or grease, and so you're going to have to figure out some way to add more to it, and butter is the best thing for it. I mean, smoked butter tastes amazing. Butter takes really well to smoking flavors, and one of the interesting things about fats is that fat equals flavor, and the reason why fat equals flavor is because flavors infuse more readily to fats than they do anything else, and fats are what transfer flavor to your tongue most effectively. So the fattier a food is, the more likely you are to taste all the different flavors in it. Now, to a certain point, too much fat and it just covers up everything. It produces these little walls around the flavor, but the right amount of fat actually allows the flavors to be uptaken by your taste buds. I've been taking some notes. I'll be sure to try some of this out for sure. I love barbecue ribs, so I'll try this next time rib cravings hits me. Yeah, 100%. The key to ribs, the key to the best ribs you'll ever have in your life is low and slow and smoke. Low, slow, and smoke. If you do those three things, you will have delicious ribs every time. You will have ribs that are the talk of the town. People will be talking about how your ribs are so tender that you didn't even need to cut them up. You just pulled the bones out. You just pulled the bones out, and there the ribs were, like country-style ribs almost. Literally, you can do that with a really perfectly done rack of ribs. You can do that. In fact, I've always thought it would be cool to sell a mock McRib sandwich that's actually made out of ribs, and use that to do it. Maybe that's one of the things I'll sell if I ever do this food truck I've been thinking about. Off-season buying is great if you're able. 100%. If you're able to buy off-season, do, because you'll save immensely, especially when it comes to meat. Consider what meats are used at what time. Like, if you can find turkeys on sale in spring or summer, get you some fucking turkeys. And usually you can find turkeys on sale right after the holidays end. So January 1st, go to the store looking for some turkeys. Guarantee you'll find some half off, 75% off. Sometimes you can find 50% off turkeys in the fucking weeks after Thanksgiving. So by the end of the holidays, if there are any left, get those fuckers, because you will have bought a $50 bird or a $70 bird or a $80 bird for like $30 or $40. And the same thing goes for summer meats. Are you upset by the price of hamburger? Do you feel like you're getting fucked over in the grocery store when it comes to your grocery prices? Well, you are. But here's one of the things that I can help you out with as a poor person, as a lifelong brokey myself. Here's some tips to help you save at the grocery store. Number one, if you've got a little bit of extra money during a season where you know that some meat that's kind of hard to get when it's needed is available, use that extra bit of money to get some groceries and stock up for a little bit, especially if you've got the freezer space for it. So like I said, Thanksgiving turkey is always a fucking jam because it just seems like it pops up at the wrong time of the year. Well, let's say you've got your tax money and you're thinking like, damn, I need to stock up on some groceries. Consider looking around to see if anybody's, got like a surplus of turkeys that have made it onto the market for some reason, you know, um, or if you've got some like money left over after the holidays and you're trying to be frugal about it and prepare for the next year. Once again, turkey trick. Let's say it's summer, or I'm sorry, let's say it's winter though, and you're thinking about summer. You can buy hamburger in bulk and store it, in individually packaged frozen bags. You can buy like just the prefabbed, basically like the prefabricated burgers. A lot of times they have a shelf life of like a year or more, as long as they're kept frozen. So like if you but that's the fucking thing. That's the fucking bind so many poor people are in to begin with. It's just that it's so hard to find the money in the budget to buy proactively like that. Did someone miss me? Always, Andrew. Food trucks are crazy within health codes, at least around here. With health codes? Oh, dude. I'm sure they are. I'm sure food trucks have to be regulated pretty heavily because people will try to get away with all kinds of shit just because they think they're less liable than a restaurant or whatever. If gender roles came from a higher power like part of God's design, do you think it becomes a moral issue to identify as a gender issue, as a different gender than the one you were born with? I think maybe it would be an issue of morality at that point, but I think it would still be more a difference in human morality versus heavenly morality, which there's clearly already some differences with, by the way. We grow quail and rabbits. Actually do as well. We have 4 frozen turkey in the freezer. There you go. There you go. And I bet you saved money on them by getting them at an intelligent time. But yeah. You should always be trying to buy things like meat and things that you can get in bulk. You should always be trying to get them when they're cheap, not when you need them. Oh my god. There's a maxim. I can teach other poor folks. You will always spend more money buying groceries if you buy what you need when you need it, rather than anticipating what you'll need and buying around that. Because if you anticipate what you'll need, which is pretty easy to do, and you buy around that, then you can coupon, you can look for good deals, you've got a little wiggle room. But if you're buying things as you need them, you end up spending whatever you have to in order to be able to feed your family that night, which is understandable, but it puts you in an unfortunate position because you don't have the ability to do any of those things. You don't have the ability to look into the rewards program and figure out how to use it to your advantage, and look into all the couponing shit and look for the good sales and all that. All the things that lead to people being able to make their grocery bill something like affordable again. All that shit is impossible to do if you are in a position where you're having to buy as you need things. Did you grow up Catholic? No. I looked in food trucks for like street fairs with permits and health codes. It's an easy no. I'm one sale away from crazy. Maybe. I don't consider myself or my family to be preppers, but we've definitely got a little bit of that mindset. I think all of us recognize that things can go belly up in a country pretty fucking quick. And I think we all also recognize that the tension is getting ratcheted up a little bit more every year now. So, but let me think here. Let me see what else you said. Looked in trucks for like street fairs, permits, and health codes. It's an easy now. Yeah, see, I'm not afraid of the permits or health codes or anything like that. Like, whatever. If I had the money to buy the fucking truck and buy the equipment and all that shit, I would have the money to pay the fucking permit fees and the licensure and all that shit. And I have no problem with obeying fucking food regulations and food safety regs and things like that. I think that they exist for a good reason. I'm in support of them being rigidly enforced. I also think, though, that there should be like when it comes to small businesses and like people trying to start businesses, I do think that there should be government programs in place to help pay for those things for people who've never started a business before. Um, but I'm sure someone will accuse me of just being self-centered with that policy. But hey, it's a policy that would help everybody, not just me. And that would be the least of my concerns too. Like I said, the main cost and like the main expenditure for me just starting up a food truck would be buying the fucking truck and any equipment that it didn't come with that I perceived as needing. Do you think God supports trans people? I'm not hating. I think it's good to have pride in something, but do you think there are two genders? If so, are they permanently assigned at birth? No, I don't think that I don't think that there are just two genders, because I think that gender is a social construct that is liable to change and subject to change over the course of years. There have been more than two genders in multiple societies, and there are shaping up to be a bunch of genders in this one. So I think that no, there are not just two genders. I think that there are probably only two genders that are popularly recognized. But that's a different statement than there are only two genders, period. And as far as them being permanently assigned at birth, no. I think the gender is assigned at birth on the basis of one's sex, but I think that that assignment is as like to be right as wrong, you know? Maybe not as like to be right as wrong, maybe not as apt, but pretty apt, right? And as far as God supporting trans people, well, if God doesn't support trans people, then it's a real mystery why he made so many of us. Not to say there are that many of us, but it's a real mystery that there are any of us at all if he doesn't support us. If he just doesn't want us to exist, then why did he give any human beings, because once again, so many makes it sound like there's millions of us, which there might be millions across the billions of people in the world, but there are certainly not millions of trans people in America. At least I don't think there would be, based on the statistic low probability of trans people. The low amount of trans people that are postulated to live in any given society. I think if there is a God, I think he created trans people partly to test his shepherds and his flock. To test his shepherds to see if they would recognize a sheep even when some of the other herdsmen are shouting wolf, you know? I think that God does it to test his parishioners, to test the flock, to see, like, do you guys actually follow this shit that you're preaching all the time and that you're listening to your preacher preach all the time, or is this just like a facade for you? But that's a big if for me. Food trucks in this area are seasonal and very short, so there's no profit in it here. Yeah, that can be the case for some areas. I don't know, dude. I think in my area, like I live in an area that a lot of what little tourism does happen here and does end up coming through here, a lot of it's food based. A shit ton of it's food based. And I live in an area of the deep south. So if I did what I want to do, which is a barbecue themed food truck, I could make fucking bank down here any time of the year. In fact, I think I could make even more bank in the winter, just because people aren't as used to seeing it. I don't think I could do it every day of the week, 52 weeks a year, but I think I could do it like 3 days out of the week, 52 days or 52 weeks out of the year. And the great thing about a food truck, right, is that you don't have to be limited to one town. You can be licensed to operate in a number of counties. And so, I could have like a whole area of range and coverage that I cover. I could, in theory, be open 5 days a week, but I'm just open, I'm open in this town 2 days a week, and I'm open in another town 2 days a week, and I'm open in a separate town 1 day of the week. Rinse and repeat. But yeah, I don't know. I thought too about like, well, what if it was successful but not as successful as I thought it could be? What if I thought like, but then that's the kiss of death though. Part of me thinks that's the kiss of death, is thinking, well, the grass is always greener on the other side. You know? Like, this is the first plan, one of the first plans I've ever hashed in my life that I think isn't just the grass is greener on the other side response, you know? If anything, this is a return to my roots. My parents were business owners. They were small business owners when I was a kid. That's what they did. They owned an auction company. And so for me, it's like a return to my roots. It's like a realization that my parents were kind of right when they said that working for other people is a surefire way to help other people get rich and to remain poor. Even though, you know, they never got rich off of their small business, they never, you know, got a whole bunch of personal wealth, but they did have a way, way, way higher degree of freedom than any of the parents that, you know, like the parents like of the kids that I went to school with and shit. Dude, I didn't even appreciate it when I was a kid, really. I didn't appreciate it until I was a teenager. My parents divorced, and my mom got a traditional 9 to 5 job. And then I started to understand more of what other kids were talking about with their parents' jobs and shit. But up until then, I didn't really get it because my parents' hours were more or less set by them. They had specific nights when they would do the auction, but outside of that, you know, their schedule was more or less open. If they needed to do something on a certain day, you know, they just let the people know that they were supposed to, like, if they were supposed to receive a load that day, they just let them know, like, hey, I won't be able to do it today because this, that, and the other thing. So just bring it down tomorrow, whatever, you know? And that's really what what I can't say I miss it because it's not like I got to experience it, but that's what I would like to that's what I would like to have. I want that kind of freedom. I want that kind of confidence in my own abilities. I want that kind of ownership in what I do, you know? We're just doing a giant garden in the animals homestead thing. Nice. Sounds like we're in a pretty similar position, honestly. I'm addicted to auctions and flea markets. So is my mom, man. I don't nearly have the same kind of love for the auction environment, although maybe I would these days. Honestly, when I was a kid, because my parents owned one, they weren't mysterious to me. They weren't. It's funny, you know, like my childhood is so different from most people's, but I don't think of it as being that different when I look back on it, right? But it was, you know, like to me, auctions are kind of mundane because I've probably sat through 1,000 auctions in my life, you know? Maybe not 1,000, that's probably an exaggeration, but I sat through at least 100. I've sat through at least 100 auctions in my life. You know, I've probably sat through 100 auctions in my life that I've wanted to be at, and probably 200 that I didn't want anything to do with, but I was a little kid. Where else was I going to go? You know? Well, my parents had an auction company for like 10 years, and they would do 2 sales a week, so what does that add up to? Let's see. That'd be 100 sales a year, and I wouldn't say I was at the majority of them. So I was probably at like 25% of them. So maybe 25 a year. 10 times 25. That's 10 times 200, or 10 times 20 would be 200. 10 times 5 would be 50. So 250. Yeah. So I've probably been to like 50 auctions that I actually wanted to go to, and 200 auctions that I could have done without. But hey, where else was I going to go? You know? I've probably I've probably helped display merchandise at more auctions than most people my age have ever even been to. And so to me they're kind of mundane, but I still have a lot of love for flea markets because that was a much more occasional treat, you know. That was a way more occasional treat. But yeah, auctions got where they were mundane for me when I was a kid. I didn't even want to go to another one. And now sitting here thinking about it is the first time I have wanted to go to one in hell 20 years. Like pretty much after I realized that I was just free labor from my parents whenever I was around at the auction, that's pretty much when I stopped wanting to go. No, that's a lie. Actually, I really never wanted to stop going to the auction now that I think about it. I don't know why I stopped. Because hell, my parents didn't give me much of a choice. Like, if they needed stuff done at the auction, they wanted me there to help. Like, I was gonna be there. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. I like to go to the auction here on Thursday night. They have Livestock and everything else. Same night. I've stopped. Need to save some money. Oh, dude, yeah. Well, if you're going to a fucking Livestock auction with a bunch of general merchandise as well, bro, it's very easy to overspend money at events that encourage you to overspend money and have multiple different lines of merchandise. So, totally understand there. Dude, some of my parents' auctions would be fucking insane, bro. Fucking insane. In a little ass town with nothing else going on back then either. Nowadays, there are some things going on, but there's still nothing like what my parents' auction was. There's just nothing like that in that little town anymore. There's no weekly event that brings people together like that. Dude, people would come in from all over the tri-state area, basically, that I live near. Well, somewhat near, I guess. People would flock from all over this area, though, and come down to that auction, and not just the people of that little town, but people from all over. And it was a way for some people that had out-of-town friends to socialize with them. It was a way for people from town to socialize with each other. I would say 90% of people that came to my parents' auctions never bought a damn thing. But it was that 10% who did come and buy a fucking thing that kept us afloat. But it was the 90% that got that 10% interested. So it's kind of weird how that works, right? And something I learned from watching my parents work when I was a kid, and maybe this isn't true for most auctions, because I've watched a lot of shows that involve auctions, and it doesn't seem like a lot of them operate like my parents does, or did. Hasn't existed in like 15 years now, I guess. Way longer than that, actually. No. How old am I? No, it's a little under 15 years since it's existed. Well, feels like longer than 15 years, that's for sure. Anyway, but my parents were fucking like they were showmen about it, like show people about it. They had such a unique dynamic, and there really was like a showmanship to the whole affair, from the way my dad would call the auctions to the way my mom would write tickets and respond to his calls and like mediate him and shit like that. Interchanges between her and random customers and things like that. Dude, if reality TV had been focused on poor people the way it was briefly there in the 2010s, back when I was a kid, bro, my parents could have had the dopest fucking reality TV show in the whole world. They could have been they were a laugh riot. Like I said, there's probably a good 90% of the people who would pack out that fucking building that were literally just there to see what shenanigans that my parents would get into that week. It was like a fucking soap opera for these people. Like I said, they attracted that critical core group of customers that wanted to buy things because they would drive by and be like, holy fuck, what the fuck is going on in there? What are they selling? Golders? You know? Animal in the barn and general items outside every Thursday. Yeah, that's pretty dope. That's pretty cool. Sometimes I sell rabbits or quail at the auction. Yeah, as one does. If you raise them, why not, you know? Why would God make transgender people if he doesn't support them? I like that question, especially if you broaden it. You could include anyone with a natural inclination against God's plan. I mean, you know, I think you mean you like that answer, but I guess it is kind of it's a question. It's an answer in the form of a question. But yeah, I like it too. That's why I said it. You know, yeah, because you can include anyone with a natural inclination against God's plan, like, and two, it makes you question really what is God's plan. It makes you wonder, right? And that's, I think, part of the point. If God exists, if the Christian worldview is at all correct, if there's any grain of correctness to it, you know, and I'm not saying there is, but if there was, then I think that the God that would result from that grain of truth would probably be one that is one who expects his plan to be discerned not through having it told to you in clear language, but rather through the long and difficult process of exegesis through example and life and experience. But yeah, I don't know. Is Sky, is there like a performance art element to the auctions that you go to? Like, is the auctioneer kind of a personality? Are there any staff of the auction that are kind of like a personality? And if so, how much does that feature into the sale? Because, like, I don't know, dude. I'm sure for some sales it's all about the merchandise, but my parents, they would get pretty crazy merchandise. They had several uh, people, like, they primarily dealt in antiques, but they would sell a lot of just general stuff too. And the people who gave them loads of general stuff, they had really good, really good trading partners in that respect, and they had really good trading partners in respect to antiques, like really good antique traders. So we had great merchandise, but I really do think that what a lot of people were coming for was the show. Had nothing to do with the merchandise. The people that ended up coming in to see what all the hubbub was about might have kept coming because of the merchandise, but most of the people were there, in my humble opinion, to eat my grandma's fried pies and to watch my parents make a fool out of some idiots in the fucking audience and cut up and make a scene and be funny. It's funny. They were kind of performers in their own right, and now I'm a performer, in kind of that same way, in a very different way, I guess. But you know, as did they make the people laugh, so too do I make the people laugh and think. Hopefully, maybe not so much right now, but well, the auction guy for the general stuff cracks a few jokes, but it's usually all business because there's so much in a weeknight. Yeah, so like you're talking about a different, like that's, but you know what though? I think it really just does depend on the business model, because my parents would have a shit ton of merchandise to go through, but it's the wildest fucking thing, right? Because my dad would figure out, like, my mom and dad were able to get shit out quickly and get shit sold really quickly, and shit would go quick, and maintain a lot of humor about it, like constant jokes. You know what I mean? Like every couple of sales, there's a little bit of humor being cast, a little. Ah, man, I miss it. I miss it. I miss it. I miss it so much. I miss that feeling of community. I miss that. I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, I don't even know what I miss, but I want it. I want what my parents had. I don't know that I'll get it in the same form, but I want a taste of that. I want to have some crazy people that stop no matter what town they see me in, because they had me in that one town and now they want my fucking barbecue everywhere. And I want eventually to have my son working alongside me, and me and him can crack jokes with each other. Maybe I can have my partner working alongside with me, and me and her can crack jokes with each other. Life. Maybe one day. Maybe the auto auction, livestock, and general stuff all going at the exact same time. Yeah, see, that is a fucking crazy event. I bet that shit is packed the fuck out, bro. And you know what, though? I bet that's the same kind of event that I'm kind of talking about, but on a grander scale. Because, dude, I can already tell if it's happening every week, that means that's like a trading post, basically. There are all kinds of people bringing their livestock to market, basically, through that place. That is so fucking neat. Isn't that cool? Is that not just the dopest thing ever? If I ever won the lottery, I think I would buy me a bunch of land somewhere in Missouri where pot is recreationally legal, instead of having to have a medical card like here in Mississippi. I think I would buy me a bunch of land somewhere in Missouri, and I think I would raise cattle. I think if I won the lottery and had the ability to spend a bunch of money on getting into some specific agriculture industry, it really does seem like the profitable one to pick that uses really big expanses of otherwise hard to cultivate land is cattle. But I also have never raised cattle on a mass scale, so I would definitely have to hire people that did know what the fuck they were doing to teach me how and tell me what to do. So maybe that wouldn't actually be a very profitable venture. I'd probably be way better off. And you know what? This is another fucking thing I've thought about too, since we're just talking about my crazy fantasies at this point. Another thing I've thought about doing is like, what if I had a lot of success with this food truck business and I was able to put away enough money that I could actually get some land somewhere in a state like that where I actually want to live. I can move the business up there, or even just somewhere better down here, move the business to a better location, or maintain the same kind of basic area of service, but move my residence to a better location at the very least. And but man, I guess like if I did this step, honestly, no, I would want it to be, I would definitely want it to be in Missouri, because there is an area of Missouri that I grew up in, which I guess since I don't live there anymore, I can just say what it is. But the area around Farmington, Missouri and Arcadia Valley, Missouri is beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And it attracts a ton of tourism compared to the rest of Missouri anyway. Like the only place that outdoes it in terms of tourism is Branson and the surrounding kind of landscape. But you know, like second to that, I would have to say is probably Arcadia Valley, and probably third to that would be Farmington and the parkland broadly. And I like, imagine this. I make enough money with the food truck to where I can afford to start a farm to table restaurant. And a farm. Like a farm with a restaurant attached. Farm to table restaurant. Fucking far away from like neighbors and shit, but not so far out on the beaten path that it's like hard to get to. That's the fucking dream, man. That's the fucking dream. Have greenhouses and like, probably wouldn't be the most profitable enterprise ever, honestly, in terms of like making me a rich person, but I would want to have some kind of like worker co-ops kind of structure where like all of the farm is fucking hand done. It's all manually hand done because it's all done in ways that are less impactful to the land and shit like that, or that don't require any heavy machines or anything like that. It's all hand done. Everybody's paid properly. Nobody's paid disgusting ass peach picking wages. But maybe I'm just a dreamer. That's probably never going to happen in my life, but that's what I want. That's what I really want. I want a farm to table restaurant. I want a restaurant where I can look at everything on the plate and be like, everything you're eating was produced on a farm that you can take a tour of. It'd probably end up being like, you know what the fucking thing that sucks most about this is? What I'm fantasizing about is, and I'm a poor person, raised poor my whole life. The only reason I would be even remotely equipped to do this is because I know how to handle a garden. I know how to pick things. I know how to tend to plant. I know how to raise chickens and things like that. I know how to raise goats and things like that. So it's a skill set I have, and I know how to cook really well, right? But what I'm dreaming about right now is opening a weird, kitschy, rich people resort where ritzy ass Nepo babies fly in from New York and Los Angeles to experience farm life for a week. They stay at the ranch house or the long house or whatever it's called. They stay at the lodge or whatever the fuck I end up calling it. And it's out set a ways, back away from everything. And then there's the restaurant, and it's called the Cabin or some pretentious shit. And all of it is so I can afford to pay myself and my fellow workers properly. All of it is so that we can afford to do the work that we're doing, which ultimately is important. It's um, producing all the food that a modern restaurant needs within the confines of the land that restaurant sits in, and that the organization that restaurant is ran by owns, right? So it's like a good project in terms of like showing people a better way, introducing, but it's all predicated on catering to the richest people among us, because everybody else has been priced out of this kind of crazy shit. Because in order to have something like this and to justify it profit wise and to pay everybody properly, you would have to be charging, like quite a bit for a plate from that place. It would be way fucking higher just because of all the labor involved and all the different requirements of all the different things you'd be growing. There'd be no way to make it a profitable enterprise and make it affordable to poor people. Unless you just like included a certain amount of um like free experience vouchers every year that are like randomly distributed. I don't know. I just don't like the idea of me running something that caters exclusively to rich people and the poor people drive by every day and think, man, it'd be so nice to go in there. I don't ever want to be that person. I don't ever want to be that person. Ugh, gross. I don't ever want to be that. So I would have to figure out some way to meld those two things. Maybe once a year there'd be a free day. Maybe that's the solution. Once a year or twice a year or 3 times a year there'd be a free day where, spring, summer, and fall harvest, like one day during each of those seasons, up to say 60 people are allowed to are like given like a free pass when they come, right? I don't know how you'd fucking organize it. I'm really tired and kind of high at this point, but yeah, like give people the ability to apply, like with their like either you can like submit some pay stubs, or if you're like already SNAP approved or something, like okay, you can get in, 60 people, eat for free, tour the farm, have the experience all the rich people get to have, swim in the pool if there is one, whatever, that would be nice. That would be cool. That would be cool. Because there would be a bunch of fucking people that, just like me, have never had a chance to eat a meal at a resort that would actually get a chance to have that experience and to like. We enjoy it. There's a lot of a lot of flea markets here, so I spend a lot of time doing it. Right on. I wanted to do a market garden with backed goods, cottage food. Cottage food laws in my area make it possible. My garden didn't go as planned this year so far. Huh. Interesting, Skyquake. What area are you in? You're not misshipping, are you? Indiana, okay. Yeah, Indiana has some good cottage laws as well. It's a good question, but I believe the issue of people naturally having desires against God's plan can be answered through biblical Christian teaching. No. Biblical Christian teaching teaches very different things depending on the biblical Christian teacher. That's the problem with it, right? It's so variable depending on the speaker, Different people look at it different ways. But, yeah. I've seen farm Airbnb working tours. They make it seem profitable. Yeah, but even then, like, isn't that still, like, how much are they charging for those Airbnbs and shit, Probably quite a bit. Maybe they're not as much as I'm thinking. Maybe it's a more affordable option than I'm thinking. And hell, maybe there's a way that I could make this profitable, like you said, by doing, like, work tours and shit. Oh my god, that's actually not a bad idea. That's not a bad idea. Have part of the season segregated for working tours during times when there's a lot that needs to be done and where harvests are a little lighter, like the menus maybe a little more limited, right? Have working tours that are like super fucking affordable. I would probably still do the Harvest Day special where there's like 60 people that are allowed to come in and enjoy the experience for free. I don't know if it would end up being 60. I'm just throwing that number out as an example, but um, probably still do something like that. But maybe I could have like working tours during certain parts of the season where there's like a less varied menu, and then um, I don't know, what would you call the non-working tours? Luxury tours? I don't know. That sounds exclusionary in a way that I don't like. I don't know how much they charge, but milking goats and gardening and stuff. Right. What I'm thinking about is like if I had like a farm to table restaurant slash resort kind of complex enterprise, I think what I would probably do on the working tours would depend. Like what I would probably have people doing on the working tours would depend on the season. But it's like in the spring, there's always a lot of pruning to be done. There's always a lot of weeding to be done. Usually a lot of planting to be done. And a lot of this stuff is stuff that you can teach people in an afternoon or two of preparation and then guide their hands with a few experienced hands. And you know, many hands make for light work. And so by doing that, you could, I mean, you probably really can make it pretty profitable, honestly. It's not a bad idea. Especially because, like I said, you can have working tours throughout the time where the most work needs to be done, and probably have working tours running at the same time that you've got uh, passive tours, or like I don't like I said, I don't know what the fuck you would call them that wouldn't sound derogatory in some way or exclusionary in some way, but yeah, you could probably have them running at the same time. So some people that aren't really interested in getting their hands in the mud and all that stuff, but do like the idea of a nice, cozy retreat somewhere quiet with lots of green areas and lots of space and lots of learning they can do and things like that. Ooh, maybe that's an angle to pursue. Anyway, probably have them running at the same time during harvest times, right? Because there's going to be people needed to harvest, but harvesting is a less intensive task, in my opinion, than things like weeding and planting and soil sifting and things like that. Market garden straight to local restaurants is possible. I mean, anything is possible. Anything is possible. Anything you set your mind to with enough dedication is possible. It's just a matter of what does one want to do. And I have this whole enterprise in my head that I've wanted to do for so fucking long. I've added so many ideas to it. I've thought about it from so many different angles. And I ultimately, at this point, know what I want to do. I just don't know if I'll ever have, I don't know if I'll ever have the fucking money to do it. I think if I knew someone with like $5 million they were willing to pour into the project, I guarantee you I could find an old, like maybe not 5 million, but give me 10 million. I can find you an old farm looking for a new owner with all the equipment and accoutrements one would need to make a farm to table restaurant. And all you'd have to build would be the restaurant itself and the accommodations if you want it to be like a resort, not just a restaurant, which is what I imagine in my head. In my head, I've got this idea where I've got like two little, I don't know what you would call them. My CO experience makes me want to call them housing units, but it's definitely not what they're called in the motel hotel complex or context, rather. So what would you call them? Buildings, I guess. Just buildings. Anyway, in my head, right, I've got like there's a bunch of land. Most of it, not maybe not most of it, but I'd say like 65% of it is cultivated in some way. and some of it is just open pasturage, and some of it's actually wooded, hopefully with trees whose nuts provide good silage pigs, because that would be part of the plan. But have the land divided up that way, and then 2 hotel buildings at one like corner of the property, right? 2 hotel buildings with different styles, I guess, of accommodation, and then one big restaurant complex at one part of it. And obviously you'd have like area specific maintenance buildings and things that contain all the tools and things like that. It's true that people teach different things, but the Bible maintains the unchanging standards by. Yeah, but different people interpret the Bible differently, and your interpretation, there's no reason we should think your interpretation is any more valid than anyone else's. But anyway, I need to get off of here. Thank you guys for hanging out. I'm super sleepy. It's been fun rattling off about my fucking crazy ideas for what I want to do with my future fucking, you know, fucking, I don't know, farm to table restaurant idea. I don't know, crazy bullshit that is inside my head that I've been spewing out of my mouth for the last 30 minutes or so. I appreciate you guys sitting here listening through that, but I have grown quite sleepy and I need to go to bed. And we will talk to you guys later. We being me, myself, and I, of course, the royal we. And thank you guys for hanging out. And thank you to the person who sent $100 earlier. I really do appreciate it. Goodbye.